But
Oh, no, I have one.
Vice Mayor, we're getting ready to get started.
because it was.
Good afternoon. I would like to call to order today's special meeting for April the 27th, 2021 of the Little Rock Board of Directors. We would like to welcome those that are in attendance, as well as those watching at home or streaming online. I also want to take time to recognize and welcome Director Hendricks, who is participating with us via video conferencing. Madam Clerk, if you would, please call the roll.
Director Hendricks. Director Richardson.
Here.
Director Webb.
Here.
Director Peck. Director Wright.
Here.
Director Wyrick.
Present.
Director Campiris. Director Phillips.
Here.
Director Adcock.
Present.
Vice Mayor Hines.
Present.
Mayor Scott.
Present. Let me now take this time to recognize Director Phillips for our invocation.
Thank you, Mayor. If everyone will please humble themselves as we go to, as we have our invocation word of prayer. Dear Lord, we come to you humble and grateful for your many blessings that you have afforded us as leadership in the city and as citizens of the city. We do not take the responsibilities you have given us lightly. We understand too much is given and too much required. So as we go about discussing the city's business that you put before us, we ask you to give us wisdom. We understand that in your word, you tell us that if we ask wisdom, you shall give it to us liberally. Give us the wisdom to make decisions that promote the safety and the health and the well-being of all our citizens in this city, and that we continue to serve them with humility and honor. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
And before we move forward with the Pledge of Allegiance, we do want to take a moment of silence. As we know, all of our hearts and prayers are going towards those that were involved with the park shooting at Cheatham Park. I want to take time to acknowledge and affirm the life of Devontae Allen. We do know Jordan McGather, Naleda Rios, as well as Brayley Higgins were also impacted and injured, and to be with those families. So we all please bow for a moment of silence. Amen. Please stand for a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic for which it stands, nation, God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. I do want to announce with the members of the board, we have one modification for tonight's agenda. Item one is an ordinance that has been deferred to May 18th, 2021 at the request of Director Wright. We have one agenda item card for item number one. For that person, we'll save this card for the May 18th. So Mr. Wilkerson will save that card for May 18th. We'll give it to the clerk because item number one is going to be deferred until May 18th, 2021. As we shared at our last board meeting, we're now going through the reading process of the ordinances as it relates to the Rebuild the Rock sales tax proposal. The first reading for item 2 was held on April 20th. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item 2 for the second time.
An ordinance to call a special election in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas for July 13th, 2021 on the question to levy a 1% sales and use tax within the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to provide that the levy shall commence on January 1st, 2022, to prescribe other matters that pertain to the election, to declare an emergency, and for other purposes. Second reading.
We've now had second readings. Is there a motion to move to third reading?
So move.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and second to move to third reading. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Nays have it. Second reading will now be read on May the 4th. The third reading, which will set up the vote.
Third reading will be on May 4th.
Third reading will be on May the 4th for item number 2. Before we go to item number 3, we'll go for it. Now we'll go to the third reading. Madam Clerk, if you read the second reading for item number 3.
An ordinance to levy a 1% sales and use tax within the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to provide that the levy will commence on January 1st, 2022, to prescribe other matters that pertain to the election, to declare an emergency, and for other purposes. Second reading.
We've now had the second reading for item number 3. This item is to levy the tax. The first item is to call the election to send to the people. That will be heard for a final time on May 4th and for an ultimate vote. We've now had a second reading for this to levy the tax. Is there a motion and second to move to third reading?
Move to suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
There's a motion from Director Richardson to move to third reading. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second from Director Phillips. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Nays have it. We will now, item number 3 will now move towards the third reading to set up the vote on May the 4th. We'll now hear from the public. Mallory, Ms. Mallory. Oh, Director Hendricks, I'm sorry. As Ms. Mallory comes up.
Just want you to know I'm present.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We got you. We got you here. Ms. Mallory.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Mallory Giroux, and I moved to Little Rock around 6 years ago. And one of my favorite things about Little Rock is the Little Rock Zoo. So today I want to talk about the Little Rock Zoo and hope for your support to include it in the tax. So I am a young professional, I'm a new mom, and I'm also a public health leader for the city of Little Rock. As a young professional, I have used the zoo as a networking opportunity. I am the president of Generation Zoo, which is a young professional group here in Little Rock from the zoo. And it also has been able to fuel my passion for my conservation passion. I'm also a new mom. And as a new mom, I get to take my son to the zoo and really show him my passion for the zoo and then hopefully pass it on to him. And then lastly, I am a public health leader. I'm an epidemiologist here in the state of Arkansas, and my research is with child and adult health. And through my research, I have seen that, especially child health, the most important thing for it is community involvement and community activities. So one of those things is getting outside, having a place where they can go to learn, to have a passion fueled, and to be able to experience things they might not be able to experience because they can't get out of Little Rock, and that's the Little Rock Zoo. You know, I think of a quote from Charles Darwin, and he says, "Species that will survive is not those who are smart or the strongest, but those who can adapt to change." So we must adapt change to everyone else around us and the other zoos and keep up with them. And the way to do that is through the support of the Little Rock Zoo through the Rebuild Little Rock tax. And I'm asking today for you to support that as well as support the zoo through growing and not cutting the budget. Thank you.
Ms. Mallory, thank you so much. But also, in addition to your comments, I want to share our appreciation to you being an epidemiologist. I always say that incorrectly, but We know how valuable your industry has been during the pandemic, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Ms. Don Jeffrey.
So, good evening, board, and what I signed up to speak about. Number two, I'm really just actually here to address the violence that's been going on in our communities. Feel free to cut me off at any time you like, but we are in a state of emergency, and I see several things labeled here as a state of emergency, but not the loss of Black lives that have been going on in our community. We need preventative programs, and that doesn't always include getting involved with the police. We need our community centers back open. We need our parks back open. Families are mourning, and I don't think we're taking this issue serious enough. I don't believe it's going to get solved by over-policing, because if you notice, police haven't been there to stop people getting killed. So if that's the solution, I'm opting out of that solution. But we need preventative programs. All this money, I see several things, money, 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 every time I come in here. But every time I look around, a school program is closing, a youth program is closing. We don't have preventative measures. So I ask you as a board to do what's right and help our communities. I stay in John Barrow. I've even called my ward director. We have a problem on our street. Nothing is being done. We need something done immediately. There are kids over there. They shouldn't be on the ground every other night. They're on the ground every other night. My kids are over there. I'm here speaking up because this is affecting us all. Whether it's police violence or community violence, it needs to start being addressed, and it needs to be brought for the forefront. We have about five Black board members on the board. Doesn't it affect you to see your people dying like this? Doesn't it hurt you to see what's going on? But we need more measures. I need y'all to get up there and push a little harder for preventative measures. I'm not talking about gentrifying our communities. Make them better. We deserve better. Our communities deserve better. The parks at Union Park deserve to be remodeled like they are on Reservoir. Our kids deserve better. And when you show them nothing, they'll think they're nothing. We have to show them more. This city has to do more. Y'all took an oath to do more and to serve the community. Well, your community is calling on you, and more people will be back on the floor to address this issue. But I had to address it today because it's a state of emergency. So thank you for acknowledging me, because I know this is out of order, but it's actually in perfect order, and something needs to be done.
Thank you, Ms. Jeffrey. Ms. Natalie James.
Hey, how are y'all doing today?
Well, Ms. James.
Good, good. Well, I'm in support of this tax, oddly enough. I'm in support of anything that's going to rebuild Little Rock, which is what we're all here to do. We have to have community involvement, as Ms. Mallory stated, opening the zoo, opening Hyman Park, opening Cheatham Park, opening Union Park, opening up all parks, especially West Central. I used to coach softball over there, and I see the impact that can be made, and I know the impact that can be made if we reopen all these centers. It gives our youth something to do. As stated before, we know it's a state of emergency. This sales tax is heavily needed so we can open up the majority of our parks that are heavily needed right now, not in June, but right now. We need it before it gets too hot, because putting the lid on something that's really hot, it just pressurizes. We don't want that. We want to go ahead and let that steam out now and let the kids get together, because it is important that they mingle with each other, they see each other, because right now our children are in a state of PTSD. They've been indoors doing virtual learning. They do their classes and at 2:45, 3 o'clock, they come out and they have nothing to do. They're in a state of something that they're not used to and not a stable environment that they're used to. So they have a lot going on mentally, and they need to learn to decompress and we have to allow those opportunities for them to decompress. I call them little humans because that's what they are. They're little humans, just like we're all humans, and they have the same stresses and triggers. And we need to allow, because we can hear what the children are saying, that they're triggered, they're stressed, and they need some type of release. We need to open up our parks, and I think this sales tax will help that, but it needs to be allocated for all parks, especially West Central. That's where most of it's needed, especially in the East End. That's where it's needed. War Memorial is a start, but we don't want to do just a start because we're in a state of emergency. We want to take care of all of it in whole, because you all represent at large in all these other different wards. Each ward needs to have an outlet for these children, and it's dire. I mean, dire. I'm going to the hospital to see a baby with her leg missing. Part of her leg is missing, you guys. It is serious. Imagine that being your child. We have to do something. We ask of you to do something. We beg of you to do what we elected you to do. We would appreciate all the help that we can get to help pull down some of this emotional stress, trigger, and PTSD that these children are having. Because now Ms. Mallory just said it, it's conducive to our children. It's conducive to their mental welfare. And we have to do that as parents, as leaders, and as guidance of this city. So I implore you to vote in favor of this sales tax so we can rebuild and unify all of Little Rock. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. James. Lauren Landers, Ms. Lauren Landers.
Hello, my name is Lauren Landers, and this is my daughter, Addison. Thank you for having us today, and thank you, Mayor Scott, for your support of the Little Rock Zoo. That's why we're here today. We want to tell you why the Little Rock Zoo is so important to us. I was born and raised in Little Rock and grew up going to the zoo, and we're so lucky to have a place right here in our very own backyard where we can visit these amazing animals in person. As you know, we're in a digital age, so it's even more important to have these in-person experiences, now more than ever. The Little Rock Zoo is where I fell in love with otters, and now I always make a point to find the otters at any other aquarium or zoo that we visit. We actually just voted on names for the new otter pups at the Little Rock Zoo and can't wait to see them. Addison, what's your favorite animal at the Little Rock Zoo?
The zoo has been absolutely amazing to me over the years, and I personally love the African penguins. It is so much fun getting to interact with them at my level and seeing their personalities every time we go to the zoo. And of course, all the animals are super cute.
Cute. So she's now 11, and she's been able to enjoy going to the zoo since she was born, and I'm so thankful that she's actually had that opportunity. Other than our regular visits to the zoo, she's been able to go on school field trips, attend Zoofari Camp, participate in the Breakfast with Animals program, and also volunteer with fundraising events. It's something our community cannot afford to take for granted. We as parents are always looking for fun activities with our kids, and nothing beats animals and being outdoors. Whenever we travel, that's the first thing we look for. Family-friendly, fun places to visit, and zoos are number one. That's why this tax is so important, to assist in the continued improvement not only to the zoo, animal welfare, and conservation, but creating more interactive exhibits and education and unique experiences. Reading or watching a video of an animal online is never as impactful as seeing it in person. The Little Rock Zoo is a top attraction, not only for the city of Little Rock, but the entire state. This has a huge economic impact, bringing in visitors from within and outside the state. This helps all of our industries here in Little Rock, from the hotels, restaurants, shops, and more. I'm clearly biased in my love for Arkansas, Little Rock, and the Little Rock Zoo, but believe we must invest in the zoo to keep our community growing and keep the kids experiencing and learning. I know our community supports the continued sustainability and improvement to our zoo, not only for our kids, but for the economic boost it provides. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lauren Landers, and thank you, Ms. Addison. We do appreciate you. Reverend Corey Anderson.
Good evening, board members. My name is Corey Anderson. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation, board member of Arkansas Baptist College, board member of the Urban League of Arkansas. I've raised 4 children here in Little Rock. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is that just maybe 2 years after I got here, almost 30 years ago, actually right at 30 years ago, I started my career as a gang intervention specialist, working at a place called New Futures for Youth. And my job there was to provide opportunities, mentorship, and answer questions for young people that weren't getting the opportunity to do that for themselves. This was in the middle of a spate of violence, kind of like we're seeing now. And what we did at that time, and what the city did, so this ordinance kind of reminds me of that, is that we embraced those young people and determined sort of in our hearts collectively, raise the money, which became known as the Prevention, Intervention, and Treatment Tax, to do the things that were necessary to help those young people lead better and more productive lives. And when we raised that money, we spent some of it on law enforcement, but what we determined was we would spend more of it on the community, that we'd spend more of it on kids, that we'd spend more of it resourcing the people that were closest to the young people in the community, the people that can not only answer their questions, but the people that can mediate their problems, the people that could help them find solutions to the things that were challenging, the people that could help them find jobs. And one of the things I'm really proud of is I helped run the first Operation Safe Summer. So the city jobs program that we have now that employs 600 young people every summer, we started that jobs program because young people that were in gangs didn't have jobs in the summertime. So we recruited businesses to hire those young people, and the city paid it. The genesis of the Youth Employment Summer Program. My point is as we think about raising more money, as we think about raising more taxes, we shouldn't forget the things that we've already done that help reduce violence in this city. We shouldn't forget the things that we've already done. And the way that we did that was we partnered with people that were already in the community. We partnered with young people. We partnered with folks that had problems and came back to the community. We partnered with them. We just didn't partner with them, though we paid them too. Created what was known as the Youth Initiative Project. At its height, we had 11, 12 community centers. We had places in the community where people were employed, and all they did all day long was work with these young people that now we're seeing as a problem again. So I think if anything, my message here today is as we think about raising more money, as we think about how we deal with the violence in our community, don't forget the people in the community. You have to be able to invest in them. You have to invest in people that can stand on street corners like we did and talk to young people. You have to be able to invest in people that can mediate these solutions. You have to be able to invest in jobs for these young people. What happened is, forgot how we solved this problem before. It's not rocket science. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We do have to have the resources, but it's not just enough to have the resources. We have to be able to put them in the right place. Thank you. I appreciate y'all. If you're interested in my role at the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation, we would love to continue working with the city. We resourced the last youth master plan that the city did. We helped to pay for that and help with the consultancy. So in that light, we continue to be interested in how we can help the city of Little Rock get better because we all live here. Thank y'all.
Reverend Anderson, thank you so much for your comments and all the work that you're doing. William Graves. William Graves.
I want to respectfully decline to speak today because I want to speak on Director Wright agenda. So I want to decline speaking today.
We'll save that along with Mr. Reverend Wilkerson's agenda item.
Okay.
Madam Clerk, if you're right, William Graves and Reverend Ronald Wilkerson for the next, for the May 18th meeting. Those two individuals will speak then. Ms. Jackie Smith. And Ms. Smith, as you come, what we'll probably do is combine Ms. Allen, and for those in the room, Ms. Allen is the mother of Devontae Allen. And Ms. Allen, I don't know if you're here, we started out with a word of prayer and a moment of silence for Devontae and the others that were injured, being Jordan and Brakely and Nalada. So Ms. Jackie.
I would like to join in prayer again.
Yes, ma'am. May we all bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this day, but we come right now in intercessory prayer on behalf of Devontae Allen's family, on behalf of Devontae Allen, but also Jordan McJordan and Nalida, as well as Brayley. Please be with them throughout this time. Please send strength and comfort in your grace and your mercy. We ask for protection and provision. We ask for upliftment, and we also ask for unity. We ask that you calm the current storms that we are in, and we know through your steady hand, all things are possible. I pray in the name of Jesus. Others pray in the respect of God's name. Amen.
Good evening, everyone.
Ms. Jackie, if you could
Can you hear me?
please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. As you can tell, we've been busy in the city. And until you've been out here in these streets, going to families and sending your condolences, do you only know what the sales tax represents? I want to know from a parent, from a citizen standpoint, where do we go from here with these sales tax? What centers are we going to open up with these sales tax? What educational programs are we going to insinuate with these sales tax? It's more to it than just putting a dollar sign on it. When you've lost a child, when you've lost a niece or a nephew, or even a brother or a mother, it's way more to it. And until you've gotten out there and you've seen the blood in the streets, you've talked to these people. We have a lot of youth, a lot. This crime is just not here. So the sales tax should not just be limited to the point, and I really agree with Rebuild the Rock. Don't get me wrong. Do not get me wrong. There's some things that I agree to, some things that I don't, but I want to make sure that they're allotted in an area that we will be able to send our kids to. We're leaving out of a time in our life where we've been in a pandemic. The mothers cannot afford to take their kids to daycare. They cannot afford to leave their kids by themselves. Look at War Memorial. It's open, correct? It's opening up for the summer. Look what area that's in. So because these centers are in different areas, can we get the sales tax? Can we get the approval for the sales tax to open up these? I was told by somebody, and that there's not kids in the East End. 2 kids just got shot. So tell me again, if kids are not in the East End. There was a park full of kids out there when her son got killed. It's not about gang violence. It's about education on where you guys have failed our people here. You failed the mothers. You failed the parents. We're asking, we're pleading, we're begging you to please, if you pass this, then by all means, allot the money to where it needs to go. And that is rebuilding Little Rock to what it is. We have a name. and we want to carry that name and represent that name well. But we cannot do that without the support of each of you. It's easy when you're a grandmother, but it's hard when you're a mother. Who wants to go and recognize their son and identify their son or daughter at a morgue? Who wants to do that? None of you. So it's easier for you to say that it's in one area, come in my area, put a police officer there, and leave the other area vacant. Put your sales tax money to where it needs to go to, and do right. And I'm done with it. She can say what she wants to.
Hello, how y'all doing? My son asked me, he was like, hey, Mom, can I go over there to the East End and play basketball? Like, yeah, be safe. He wasn't safe. He was just playing basketball. And somebody decided to drive to the East End where they know it's not going to be no police officer. They've been shooting up all the parks and they know y'all don't care about us. So we're going to do it everywhere they don't care about us at. It's not just that park. It was another park. And it's going to be another park. But they're going to be done with our parks because it ain't going to be no more parks for us. They're going to go to you all parks. And then that's when y'all going to start doing something. It should be all lives matter. We should always be equal. Little Rock needs to stand up together. I don't care what color they are. They need to go to jail. It needs to stop. It's getting worse and worse. We don't even want our kids outside, so we got to keep them in the house. They're going to have a mental breakdown. They don't go to school. Don't nothing get done about it. My son only wanted to play basketball. They target everywhere they know, don't nobody care. And I hate that everybody, who ever been in the East End? Anybody ever been in the East End before? That's it, everybody else scared to go to the East End? I done been in everybody else's neighborhood. Come to the neighborhood. It's not no bad kids out there. They dress different, but they're not no gang members just because they're the color. If that was the case, every white person is racist just by their color. Make it different. I don't have any more kids. That was it for me. That was it. I ain't got nothing. And ain't nobody called or said nothing but the mayor and the chief. And they the only one that came out there and walked, but everybody else sitting in here. I think we're going to have to start getting together and get us some more people in here. We're going to have to start voting. This lady right here, she made a change. I wouldn't leave my bed till she called me. We looking for her to be our leader. We starting us a leader group now. We need changes. We're going to start voting. We're going to start replacing. I'm going to have to make this change. And we ain't going to talk about no color because we're going to be all together. God said, judge nobody, let him judge. If they did something wrong, I don't care if they black, white, purple, they going to jail. We with y'all on it. But we not just ain't going to care about them because of what they color is. Because once they get through with us, they don't go to y'all color because we won't have nothing left. And the sales tax, if you have to do it, put it so these kids can change. So y'all won't have to be afraid not to go to the East End. We can change their mindset. They can go to Jump Barrel, let them find something different. Let's show them we are together no matter what race, We as one. Arkansas gonna be great again. Put the money where it needs to go. I hope y'all do, and I'm gonna pray. Because everybody got today to see God. And I pray y'all make the right decision. Because I'm praying that y'all do. My son wasn't in no gang. Somebody made a statement, my son was in a gang. Because the way he looked, this how he looked. He in the gang because what he wear. So everybody I see that's white is racist. Because all black people are gang members. I'm not a gang member. My son not a gang member. Well, I don't even associate with people like that. Just say, all lives matter and we're going to be one. And we're going to help. We need y'all to help us. I'm tired every day, even this morning, 2 people got shot and killed. This person did, that person did. Ain't nobody gonna be left. None of us gonna be left. I guess they're gonna go for the next people. Because we're gonna all be sucked out, so they're gonna start going for y'all, going for the other ones, because ain't none of us gonna be left. Put the money where it go, or they gonna change their direction and go to the other side. And that's when y'all gonna start doing something. Because right now, when they killed my son, they did not care. It ain't gonna be no more. Ain't nobody at the park no more. So now they finna go start terrorizing other people. Y'all should think about it. Y'all should pray about it. But Little Rock will be done if y'all don't do nothing about it. Thank you. I'm gonna pray for y'all. All lives matter. I don't care what color you are. We need to stand together as one. Support the mayor. We need to do everything we need to do. And y'all need this lady right here on y'all team. Oh, y'all really need to hear this. Y'all really need to hear this. Didn't I tell you that, Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Y'all need her. Y'all need her to be in here with y'all. Because she gonna make a lot of change. She done made a lot of change already. When you went to the park, was anybody there, Mayor?
Yes, ma'am, it was just a few.
Just a few, because she already told me they don't nobody need to be down here. It was peaceful. I would never went down there if she went there. Y'all need her. And it's a lot of us ready to back her up. The day my son had passed and I wouldn't even get out my bed. And she called me. And what I told her, I always say, oh, it's like people did this. I told her she was, but the communities need to. I don't blame y'all for this. I blame y'all for not. Thank y'all so much. So hurt.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Ms. Allen, thank you so much. Ms. Smith, we're remaining in prayer for you. We'll have a brief recess. We're going to start back in about 3 minutes. We're going to be starting back in about 3 minutes. Another 60 seconds. We're going to get started. Trying to 30 seconds. Quick.
Very quick.
Meeting is now in session. Ally, I believe we've now read all of our cards. We have one email to be read.
From a Yolanda Dreer, it just states she's in support of agenda items 1 through 4.
Thank you so much, Ms. Yolanda Dreer, in support of items 1 through 4. So now, we'll now move towards adjournment. We've had all of the readings for items, for the two ordinances. We do know, Director's Right ordinance has been moved to May 18th. We've had the two ordinances that have both received their second reading. They'll be decided upon on May the 4th. We'll transition the resolution to May the 4th as well, and have a discussion about the Rebuild the Rock proposal during the agenda meeting. And so, as we all know, we are here for the agenda meeting as well, so we'll swiftly transition from our special board meeting. For those who are watching online, on May the 4th, we will have a vote on items 2, 3, and 4. Items 2, 3, and 4 will be voted on May the 4th. We will now transition from our current meeting to an agenda meeting where we will discuss those items that will be on the new agenda for Rebuild the Rock. We definitely hope to receive some commentary from members of the board of how important this is. Motion to adjourn, meeting adjourned.
Mayor, point of order, there was no second or vote on that. Motion to adjourn.
There is a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say aye. Ayes have it. We're now in our agenda meeting. We'll now have Gabe Holstrom, who will be coming up to discuss the 501-day presentation. And Mr. Holstrom, sorry, I apologize, my friend. I also want to take this time to read a proclamation, and then allow for you to then give a presentation. Whereas in 1947, the entire state of Arkansas was assigned the 501 area code as a part of the original North American numbering plan for telephone numbers, which served the entire state until the introduction of the 870 area code in 1995 and the 479 area code in 2002. And whereas today the 501 area code serves central Arkansas, including the counties of Cleburne, Conway, Faulkner, Garland, Hot Spring, Lone Oak, Perry, Pulaski, Saline, Van Buren, and White. And whereas these counties and the cities which are located within them are the heart of Arkansas's home to breathtaking natural scenery, charming small towns, bustling business districts, and the capital city of the state. And whereas the Downtown Little Rock Partnership, working with cities, chambers of commerce, and other community organizations throughout the 501 area code, has identified May 1st, or 5/01, as a day to celebrate the people, the businesses, the shopping, the food, the attractions, the recreation opportunities, and the special qualities of living in the 501. And whereas many cities and businesses throughout the 501 will be offering special rates or discounts, will be planning activities or special events, and will be encouraging people to explore their city or county on May 1st as a way to truly experience the 501. And whereas on 501 Day, some businesses in Little Rock will be offering discounts, special events will be taking place at the Farmers Market, Little Rock Zoo, and Baker's Alley off Main Street, sponsored by the Downtown Little Rock Partnership in the Little Rock Parks, while residents and visitors alike will be encouraged to explore Little Rock to discover more to love about living in the 501. Now, therefore, I, Frank Scott Jr., Mayor of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, do hereby declare Saturday, May 1st, 2021 as 501 Day in the City of Little Rock, and encourage the residents and businesses of Little Rock to join me in celebrating the advantages of living in the 501. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor.
And Mr. Gabe, we'll give you the official notice later.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. And this is a fascinating dynamic to be a part of, because you basically just said everything I wanted to say. So I will be brief. But one thing I do want to point out is that this is something that we've been talking about, the Downtown Little Rock Partnership. If you can imagine getting a Zoom call with 25, 30 of the different cities located in the 501 area code a few months back, while I pitched this idea of a holiday that we just decided to make up. Everybody sat there and looked at me, and we all know in this world of Zoom, those get to carry on for quite a while, and everybody, nobody said anything, but after the meeting, we got a bunch of emails where they talked about how much they loved the idea, which I responded, well, at the next Zoom meeting, let's chime in. So this Saturday on May 1st, 5:01, we have 20 some odd different cities from across the 501. There's about 80 different cities in the 501 area code that are all participating in this. Some have different art walks, and this goes all the way from Hot Springs to Searcy. There's a bike race down in Hot Springs. There's a 501K run walk where you can see all the murals here in downtown Little Rock. A variety of different things are going on at the zoo, at the farmer's market down in Soma. Businesses and shops are offering specials. So really what we wanted to do is get people out in their communities to visit with their local businesses, spend money, and have the businesses offer a 501 themed discount or special. So if you want to learn more, I would urge you to go to celebrate501.com. There's activities being added there daily. A special thanks to the mayor and to the Parks Department for their focus and work on this. And I look forward to seeing everybody out and about. I've checked the weather right now. We're going to have some pretty weather, and we have these special shirts. So Mayor, we brought you a shirt. I'll set it up here for you. But thank you all, and I look forward to seeing everybody out and about on Saturday.
Thank you so much. Well, I'll come give you the proclamation. I'll get the shirt from you.
Mayor, you might want to walk him to his car because he left about 10 other shirts in his car. So if you can take a brief jog, Mayor, to his car because he left about, I think, at least 10 other shirts in his car.
Director Richardson, I'll cut you a discount.
Those in order. All right. We are now, as we share, we are now in our agenda meeting for the May 4th board meeting. That'll be next Tuesday. We have a few modifications. As we already shared, item 6 is an ordinance that's been deferred to May 18th. No, item 6, actually, I'm thinking about Director Wright's ordinance was already deferred to May 18th, but we have another modification for tonight's agenda. Item 6 is an ordinance that has been deferred to May 18th at the request of Director Richardson. Now knowing there's a new order for the agenda, we'll now take up items 2, 3, and 4. Are there any questions or concerns about items 2, 3, and 4 that have transitioned to May 4th?
I just want to be clear, Mayor, that I understand what we're talking about. So before we do the consent agenda, we're discussing the third and final reading related to the sales tax ordinances and resolution. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, actually, you are correct. Thank you for that clarification because that's not a part of the consent agenda. So thank you so much, Director Phillips. Are there any questions in regards to the consent agenda, which are items 1 through 3 from members of the board? Any questions from items 1 through 3 on the consent agenda from members of the board? Any questions from items 1 to 3 in regards to the consent agenda from members of the board? Seeing none, are there any questions as it relates to the separate items 4 through 6. Six is deferred, 4 through 5. Any questions as it relates to 4 through 5, separate items? Moving from that, items 2, 3, and 4 that were transmitted from the special meeting will be items 6, 7, and 8. Any questions to the new 6, 7, and 8? Any questions to the new 6, 7, and 8?
Mayor,
Director Wright?
Mayor, can you go back to item 7 about the CDBG home and Hope War funds?
Yes, ma'am, we haven't gotten there yet. We're still on the separate items.
Oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Adding those others to it.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. So that will actually be 9 now.
Okay.
We'll get you a new agenda.
Okay, I just needed a presentation on that so I know how the funds are being spent.
Yeah, so Director Howard, in advance, if you'll know, Director Howard, if you'll come, not now, but when we get to that, Director Howard. Thank you, Director Wright. Any questions on 6, 7, and 8?
Mayor, I have my
Director
hand.
Hines was trying to get your attention, Mayor.
Director Hines,
I have my hand raised on the screen as per our protocols.
it's just not showing up on here, so maybe you're having some technical difficulties, but since you're now letting me know it doesn't show on here. Director
Showing-
Hines?
It's showing up on mine, so.
Director Hines?
Yeah, I'll just start as Director Phillips last couple sessions wanted to know why none of us were talking and, part of the way I was brought up, if you don't have anything good to say, you shouldn't say anything. But with that being said, I think part of it would be really that our silence should have been deafening to the supporters of the sales tax. When I hearken back to my first year on the board, we launched our previous cent initiative, which was very well thought out, very well engaged by every board member, very well engaged by every ward in the city as we went out for public hearings in every ward. And I think we had 2 or 3 citywide hearings after that. Then we put together a sales tax plan with input from all the ward directors on top of those public hearings. To say that that's been done in this case is, I just don't believe is true. I will say that on first glance, all of the parks and recreation, golf and fitness spending seems warranted based on as many parks as we have, quality of life. One of the big things I think it addresses or could potentially address was, I think a little more money needs to be moved into operating expense. But it addresses a lot of those needs in the maintenance and operating expenses of maintaining all of our parks. And I'll have to say, and this is not a shot at the zoo, I think we have a great zoo. I think it can be greater. Our biggest pitfall with the zoo has been funding continuing operations. We've not had much problem putting in new exhibits and raising capital funds to do that. I think a $20 million operating expense is probably justified to keep them in their accreditation. What I do object to is $30 million of capital. We can look at what we've done with the Art Center. We can look at what we've done with the Tech Park, where we have provided seed money and those organizations have gone out and raised the rest. And in some cases, our seed money with the Art Center was roughly 37 million, Bruce. And I think Mr. Stevens and his group have raised well over 100 million to put into it. Our Tech Park, the seed money was 22 million over 10 years. The Tech Park has raised on average about 3 million a year to put back into the Tech Park. So that's at least an equal match, if not more, 3 $3 million over 10 years is $30 million, and our initial seeds of $22 million. When I look at, and the real interesting thing about these first two areas, the parks and recreation and the zoo, they're very lined out as to where the money's going and how it's going to be spent. Once we get past that, it's very nebulous. We talk about a fire station, which is specific, but then we talk about public safety in terms of technology and operations for both the fire department and police, but not any delineation on how that money is going to be divvied up between those two departments. Whether or not it means any new officers, COPP or otherwise. We get into public safety vehicle replacement. That's split between the fire department and police. Should be lined out as to how much we're doing. The previous sales tax, we put our fleet replacement into the capital, which it shouldn't be there. And now we're still reaping the same position we were in 10 years ago, and that we don't have a fleet replacement. I like the fact that it's moved over into. I don't think it's near enough funding. One of the components that everybody I hear when we talk about policing and 21st century policing is COPP. We have gutted at every turn our COPP program. If there's not dedicated funding that goes on top of our 574 staffing in this, I won't support it. I think we should have at least 25 million for dedicated COPP officers on top of our sworn force. So if it's however many that gets us, over $2.5 million a year, we ought to reinstate the $5,000 bonuses for resident recruits that's been discontinued. That was helping our recruiting. Our recruiting's fallen by the wayside. And I think we ought to, as they're already talking about, I think we should have some dedicated social workers out of that additional funding in the police department. As I go down to infrastructure, $20 million in capital investment, not near enough compared to what we spent last time. Street resurfacing, you know, I think we've failed to ignore that we jettisoned $2 million a year out of our street fund to Rock Region Metro. We probably should get some dedicated funding in this new sales tax to go to Rock Region Metro, and then we have $2 million a year in the street fund to go to resurfacing, and you could reduce that number by that much. Now we get into, that's all the infrastructure, we get into early childhood education. I can tell you that I, to a T, have heard no one that supports this from my representatives or the business community. This is the area that the state and federal government have. In fact, I find it kind of interesting that our education czar did not even realize that the federal government already gives vouchers up to 200% of the poverty level. When he was initially in here touting his program, we weren't even aware of that. I think this is, we struggle to program and spend the $5.5 million every year for PIT and through children and families. I doubt we can do 45 million. That number's too large. Our economic development number is not large. It's a nebulous fund. The port itself needs $30 million for improvements to the land they bought. That ought to be lined out as a line item that the port gets that much money. The tech park, I've had discussions with the tech park board. They're willing to raise the money. If we give them the seed money, they want to build another $30 million building. They're full right now. We've had companies go to North Little Rock that we recruited through our FinTech Accelerator. I think we should put at least $9.5 to $10 million in there, and then they can go raise their other funds like we're asking the zoo to do and like we've done the Art Center. Information technology, I think, is definitely warranted. Our affordable housing fund needs to be delineated. I hear talk that there's homeless funding there. I've been to Tulsa when we were trying to relocate our homeless day center. I was traveling Tulsa as part of my territory. They have a fabulous homeless center there. It's right in the middle of downtown, a couple blocks from their arena. It's done with public and private funding. It's an overnight facility. They can house people there. But we need to be spending probably $10 million over 10 years to that program for $5 million for capital and $1 million a year for operating to address the homeless issue. That is not getting better. It's gotten worse through the pandemic. It was already getting worse before the pandemic and continues to be all over our city. With that, I'll cap, but that's just my initial take on what's going on. I will not support this without some tremendous amendments and some delineation on how the money is going to be spent.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor. Just, shared a lot, and I'm happy after a couple of months of sharing information that you finally shared some information. So thank you so much. We do appreciate that. Dr. J. Barr?
So just to respond to your comment about the federal dollars, yes, there are federal dollars that are available for up to 200% of poverty. You're right. Unfortunately, there are not nearly enough of those vouchers that are available in a sustainable manner. There has been a burst of funding related to the recovery, but that is not sustainable. And as a result, only 17% of the children who come from families below 200% of poverty have access to any of those vouchers in the city of Little Rock. What these dollars would do is that it would target, through a partnership with the Division of Early Childhood, target these vouchers to Little Rock residents. And we would be therefore funding these vouchers that would come directly to those families with students where the families are 200% of poverty or below. And so that there is some money, but there is not nearly enough money. And this would ensure that more and more of those families have access to those high quality providers.
So, Dr. Barth, are you talking about State Department Early Childhood Development?
Yes,
Okay,
at
so
DHS.
you're talking about a state agency that gets state funding from our taxes that should be providing this program, not the city of Little Rock.
Well,
We're going to disagree on this because I'm not yielding on this. We are out of our lane in what the city of Little Rock should be doing with tax dollars from the citizens. That's a state issue and a federal issue that we already have a Department of Early Childhood Education that's already versed in programming. We should be contacting our legislators to get more funding, not the city of Little Rock.
So Dr. Barth, no need to respond. You've already restated what you've already shared the last few meetings. So thank you for correcting the record.
Thank you.
That being said, Vice Mayor, again, you laid out a lot of things after at least a month after the package has been related and you've been spoken to over the past year. So I want to go through some of the things that you've shared.
We're just going to, and I'm sorry for interrupting you, Mayor, but I know some of our other colleagues have their hand raised. So are you going to respond to each of us? Okay.
You can, but also what would be the desire of the board? Something different?
Well, no, I'm just saying I saw other people with their hands raised, and I didn't know if you wanted to let everyone get it out and then respond, or if we're going to go back and forth to each person.
I think it make it kind of long if you let everyone.
Okay,
Yeah.
understood.
Sure. I just want to make sure everyone's aware of the accurate information. That being stated, one of the things that you shared, Vice Mayor Hines, that you said that you didn't believe that a lot of outreach has happened. This board has been aware of a looming sales tax since January of 2020 when we originally announced the Lift Little Rock sales tax proposal. Since that time, and even prior to that time, there's been a number of different community outreach that this board has participated a part of. The R3 Little Rock Parks Task Force, which also included Directors Kathy Peck, Webb, as well as Director Wyrick, who are part of that task force, met for close to a year with community members that were part of it. And though a lot of the recommendations for the Quality of Life in Place came from that task force. Definitely want to give kudos to one of the brainchilds of Director Dean Compuris of Think Big Little Rock. Think Big Little Rock met for almost 2 years. I was a member of one of the lead task force chairs. Director Phillips was the co-chair. Think Big Little Rock, a lot of their recommendations as it relates to quality of life in place, as well as early childhood education, and that, I believe, Director Computers had close to 50 young professionals from across the city, all walks of life and socioeconomic status, met for 2 years and gave a lot of different proposals, much of which is also included in this proposal. Dr. Barth, along with others, there was an education summit of all of the school districts within the city of Little Rock and Pulaski County area. All shared the need. They were happy that Little Rock stepped in and we now have a chief education officer where this board passed the community schools model, which also played a very key role. And now this locally elected school board that's moving through that process because of the work of this particular board from that standpoint. There's also been an infrastructure study group that has detailed the different things from street resurfacing and neighborhood streets, as well as each member of this board had a community member, part of that infrastructure study group that's being led by Garver engineers. Much of this proposal has had all these particular initiatives included. So definitely want to remind board members of their involvement there. Director Hines, you were intimately involved in our public safety summit of what we had state, local, and federal as well. Director Webb was very involved. Actually, she was a member of the Zoo Task Force that brought forth, and all of their recommendations and understanding are part of this task force as well. So, and in addition to that, every member of the board had a meeting with myself and Mr. Moore individually as we visited about this particular process. So I just want to correct the record that there has been intense amount of community meetings, in addition to all of the neighborhood walks that we've been doing, not only recently, but throughout the pandemic. And clearly, we have not had kind of citywide meetings because we've been in a pandemic, but we've been in numerous amount of feedback as the elected leader of the entire city, along with our at-large city directors and being part of the community outreach process. We know this package represents the will of the people. However, we also understand the checks and balances of the executive branch as well as the legislative branch. This board has to refer it to the people, and we've continued to ask for feedback. We again are glad that Vice Mayor Hines finally gave some feedback that we will take under strong consideration as we continue to move forward from that standpoint. So just wanted to share all that just to make sure we corrected the record on those various things. I won't go through some of the agenda items, but we've already discussed the education portion. Again, we've been talking about this for a month. We've already had Director Kevin Howard share what the funds would be utilized for as it relates for housing. We went through those intimate details, and you all are aware of that from that standpoint. Now we'll transition to the next board member, Director Phillips.
I think I was after,
Are you keeping?
Well, I wasn't keeping, but I know
Parliamentarian
before I raised my hand, Director Compeers and Director Wright and Director Webb.
Actually, yeah, Director Wright. I think you were next, Director Wright. Yes, ma'am.
Well, Mayor, I would like to add a slight correction. And if I'm wrong, I apologize in advance, but I appointed myself to the infrastructure subcommittee, and I do not recall getting a report of the findings. I appointed myself as the representative because I wanted to make sure that neighborhood streets were addressed, and I did put forth my recommendations and shared my concerns that the matrix that was being utilized and that was explained in those subcommittee meetings, that it did not, in my opinion, and I never did get any clarification, it did not show me as an elected representative how I could get my neighborhood streets done, because the matrix called for the money to be allocated to the streets that impacted the most people and had the highest volume. And that will never be a neighborhood street that may only have residents that live on there and on that street and maybe just a few cars. So that was my concern, and I do not ever recall hearing how that was resolved. And the next thing I knew was that we were extending a contract for Garver engineers to continue to develop that. And so to say that infrastructure, that this group subcommittee weighed in on infrastructure, I do not see how that took place. And if I went to sleep or something, maybe, and if, like I said, in advance, if I missed something, I apologize, but I do not recall getting that information.
No, thank you so much, Director Wright. And you are actually correct. And that's the reason why I use the word much of, because that infrastructure group is not completed with that information. This board did vote to extend that contract because they're still going through it. And so that's the reason why I use the language of much of a part of that process. So you are correct. But going back to the infrastructure, before we go to the next board member, if everyone will recall, the original plan had infrastructure at 9%, but due to feedback from many, feedback directly from Director B.J. Wyrick, you'll recall the very next meeting, the infrastructure line item increased from 9% to 12%, making, if you look in the order of the percentages, quality of life in places at 34% being the most funded. Public safety and public infrastructure are tied both at 12%. That's a direct reflection of Director Wyrick, who had weighed in on that, as well as you are correct on your analysis, because the infrastructure study was still going on, Director Wright, and that's the reason why I use the language of much of. We'll now move over to, I think, Director Wright. So Director Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I've got a couple of questions and also several comments, and I'm going to agree with Vice Mayor Hines that while we've had a group here and a group there and another group that met about something else, I don't think we've had the cohesive kind of outreach that Director Hines, Vice Mayor Hines talked about, that the board had some years ago when the last sales tax was presented. And I understand that we will just have to agree to disagree on that. We've raised the issue in the last few weeks about the federal funds, the almost $38 million that the city will be getting. And we were told one time that we don't know all the guidelines, and we're not sure exactly what that's going to be used for. But in most of the comments I get from my constituents, they ask about that $37.5 million. And I would like a definitive answer on that. That's one point. A second point is, I was reading a book. There was a man who spoke at the National League of Cities a couple of years ago. He's written a whole bunch of books, and I believe I brought you one called The Love of Cities. And in one of those books, he talks about a hierarchy of needs that cities have that's very similar to a hierarchy of needs that people have. And at the bottom of that hierarchy, it starts with functionality and safety. And then we move on to the quality of life issues, and as we call the wonderful place issues, the special things that make our cities special. But I want to say that over the last, I don't know, few years, I spend almost all of my time dealing with issues of functionality and safety. I have the aspirational hopes, as other people on the board do. We all have aspirational hopes and want these quality of life dreams for our city. But I spend all of my time dealing with floods and drainage and safety issues, and looking at just the $20 million in infrastructure requests from Ward 3 from the first cycle of the last time. And my residents expect us to meet those basics of functionality and safety. And at the same time, over the last few years, we have tried to address some of the issues that Director Wright has been raising. We've tried to address those at CYF. We talk about the needs of the 5,500 people in Little Rock between 18 and 24 who are not in school, not in jobs, training, and not employed. And we talk about the needs for programs to address violence and other issues. And we came up with programs that we started in Secial that we had a city employee who, when he retired, was replaced by somebody who's a policy analyst. So
Can
we,
I interrupt for a second, Director Webb? What's SCL?
social and emotional learning. We've sent people to Louisville, to Cincinnati. I've given talks to people here on 2 occasions of folks who were training on those programs, and now we have removed that option. That person, there's no longer a person on city staff to deal with that. So what I'm hearing is, I mean, and we had to fight to keep the Bridge to Work program for the homeless, the employee program. But I want us to make sure, I want to be able to have my emails be about the quality of life in the place and not about the flooding, not about the safety issues, the tragic deaths that affect all of us, regardless of what ward they are in. And my constituents expect our city to meet this threshold for functionality and safety in order for us to move to these other higher areas. So I guess my one question for right this minute is about the 37.5, and I believe you said to Director Phillips that we would address questions at the end, and that's fine.
No.
Thank you.
I did not, said I would address questions at each director.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Thank you. Well, you did share a lot. And again, I appreciate you sharing some information at this meeting on some of your concerns. We'll first go with the American Rescue Plan. We are still awaiting final guidance on the American Rescue Plan. We hope to have the first tranche of the 37 million. So it's not 38 million, it's 37 million from what we've been told. Is that correct, Chief Financial Officer? Yeah, matter of fact, how about you come? And so if I say something incorrect, as well as Emily, you guys stay there just in case I say anything incorrect. It's not 38 million, it's 37 million. We expect to have the first tranche of the funds on May 10th, but that could change. I actually received a phone call from the federal government as we were walking in that they're still working on some other guidance, and they were asking for some questions from certain cities. So we're grateful we got that phone call as we were walking in. So we expect to get the first half of that 37 million on May the 10th. It's the goal date. And then we will not get the second half. We do not know, and they have not shared, besides the fact that we plan to get the second half by the end of 2022. Is that correct, Emily? And
This,
yeah, I know the second is either 22 or
Okay.
23, maybe 23.
yeah, we are expecting the first half. The earliest they said would be the May 10th timeframe. It will be half. The remaining half will be sometime in 2022. The funds must be spent by 2024, end of 2024. And I have been attending some sessions. They have not put out guidance yet. It's been extremely general, very, very general. They have said that they are targeting to provide some guidance by the time the May 10th deposit gets here, but we do not have that guidance yet. What the sessions that I have attended have strongly said is to make sure, number one, that these are used for one-time type of expenditures, that there should be absolutely nothing of an ongoing operating nature included, because it is not an ongoing funding source. And so that any program you might implement would end if you were to try to do some kind of programming with it. Again, as to how much it is to address the impact of COVID, we believe there will be some sort of an economic portion of it, development type portion, to help the economy recover. But the guidance has been not clear at all yet, so we don't know how closely it has to be related to COVID, with the exception of things like transit, rail, public transportation type services, some things like that. There are some housing things that we believe, but again, we just don't have the guidance yet. But it can't be used for ongoing public safety operations or for ongoing park programming or for, we don't even know that in the infrastructure piece where they've talked about transportation, primarily public transportation, rail, transit, roads, we don't know whether that will be included at all.
And
yet.
that's one of the things that we've been advocating for, is for more guidance, because the last thing that we should do is make commitments, one, because we don't know what's in compliance. I know there's been I've heard some things from at least it's come back to me, the directors are promising certain things that don't even qualify. So I want to make sure that everyone understands the compliance standpoint on it, because A, it's one-time money, and we never should put one-time money towards ongoing expenses. So that's number one. And two, the definitions are so broad and will ultimately change and change again until we get the money inside the bank. So that's the reason why you haven't received anything, because we don't know all the facts just yet. And so that's why there's a hesitancy to share anything, because we get some information on a Monday and it changes on the Wednesday from that standpoint.
And they have told us to anticipate, similar to the CARES type funding, there will be guidance provided throughout. So once we do obtain funds and get some guidance where we're comfortable moving forward, they're telling you, you definitely need to document each decision at the time it's made under the rules that exist at that time in order to be able to defend it when the rules change later. We have set up a separate bank account to receive this funds. We have a separate fund that we will be recording this revenue in to keep everything completely separate from any other city funding.
And also, we've also already approved that a portion of the funds, we will kind of have American Rescue Plan director, because we are very concerned about getting a slap on the hand from the federal government. The dollars aren't used explicitly the way they should. And I think it was great that you already shared that we can't necessarily utilize it for parks. I know I heard someone say that possibly use it for the zoo, that's kind of out of the question as well, unless they change again based on what we've heard. Again, much information is still evolving, but we kind of have some general things of what we know we can and cannot do. But even with those things that we know that can and cannot do, it may be reshaped later. But as soon as we get that information, we will bring it to the board, or at least send a memo out. And so thank you so much, Director Linehan. Thank you so much. Director Cox, would you like, I know you came up, would you like to add anything? All right, I understand. So, so that's on that one question. And Director Webb, thank you so much. I have been reading portions of the book. I have not completed it in its totality, but you are correct about the premise of functionality and safety, and then aspirational things. So I'll do, because we've heard it from Vice Mayor Hines, and we've now heard it from you. We are all aware of what happened in 2011. That was 10 years ago, and a lot has transitioned in our city. By the very fact that we've been in a pandemic, or still in the pandemic, there are certain things that just aren't able to happen because of that. So we have to, let's please not keep referring to the past. We're in the present. We're trying to work towards the future. We're trying to focus on innovation and growth. But you are very correct about the functionality and safety, Director Webb, because when you look at our commitment as a city, just in our general fund, to remind the board members, is $212 million. 52% of our general fund is public safety. Literally, we are giving close to $80 million to the members of Little Rock Police Department, which they need, and we want to continue to do what we're doing there. Close to another $53 million for Little Rock Fire Department. So more than half of our general fund budget is going towards public safety. So we truly are taking care of functionality and safety. And one of the things, the reason this board as well has approved a staffing study. We hope to have that completed by June. And that staffing study will let us know the accurate amount. There's been numbers thrown out about how many we need to increase the police force for. And so we plan to have that number from that standpoint. But to Director Hines as well as Director Webb, the dollars that we have associated in addition to the close to 140, $150 million for public safety, we're putting another 64 million in the first 10 years towards public safety. So we're very committed to functionality and safety, as well as from a standpoint on public infrastructure. Mr. Moore, because since it's been shared so much about what happened in 2011, we do know in the 2011 cent tax, there was dollars went towards public safety and fleet, much of which were capital and not towards operation technology like this. And I'm pretty sure we're spending more in this tax than we did 10 years ago. I know you keep a handy dandy sheet of paper with you.
When I got this laminated, I was a lot younger, and now I can't really see it. But so again, we had the 3/8 cent and the 5/8 cent, and so and if the board would remember, we in both police and fire, we were in a position of we had went out and received federal grants for additional staffing. So we wanted to be sure to keep that staffing in place. So when we talked about operations, for instance, under police, we talked about LRPD staffing, 52 new positions, and retaining 27 grant positions, and same with fire. But the overall total for police for the 3/8 cent was about 32 million. For fire was about almost 5 million, and then 6.6 operationally and 4 million operationally for the fire department.
So we're spending vastly more.
Well, yeah, again, the 3/8 cent was always designed, or not designed, it was voted on as to sunset this year. So yeah, the permanent tax would allow it, obviously, to be able to spend more.
Thank you so much. I believe we've answered all of your questions, Director Webb. All right. Did all of your questions get answered, Director Webb?
For now,
Yes, ma'am.
sort of.
And please feel free to, we want to hear as many questions as possible. We'll now go to, I believe we already had Director Wright, we've already had Director Webb. Director Peck?
I actually think Director Compuris is first.
Let's go ahead.
What? Go ahead, D.
Whatever.
I think Director Compuris was first.
Director Capiers? Oh, he did. Oh, he normally does. I'm sorry, Director Capiers.
Actually worked the machine, I mean, correctly.
I apologize. I'm very grateful that you took time to learn how to use the machine.
Antoine taught me. I was a slow learner. He had to do it 3 times. There are several, first of all, what I wanted to, the areas I want us to relook at. First of all, this $37 million, and we talk about it coming in over a year or two, but this is a 10-year issue we're talking about. So if this money, however Sarah says we can spend it legally, comes in a month from now, and we can offset some of the things that are in this proposal with that money, that's money that can go back into streets, nuts and bolts.
Nuts and bolts.
And so my worry is, why in the world are we doing this when we've got $37 million out there that we don't really know how we can spend it? But my reading of it is that it has to be for a set project. It can't be for an ongoing project. Is that correct?
I'll let you finish because there's some things I got to correct you.
Well, so just as you consider this, it seems a little bit silly to me that we're going to rush this to a vote when there's $37 million that we don't really know the rules are, that there are multiple projects in here that we could use it for, and then use some of this other money someplace else, as a thought. The second thing is, I appreciate your sensitivity to the speakers tonight on the shootings and visiting
the people whose families were injured. I think that what Lance said about COP officers is critical to what we're doing, and they're not in the proposal right now. If we're going to take and try to help communities that need help, if there had been a COP officer riding his bicycle over there that day, what would have happened? And what happens, because we're short-staffed, and I know we argue about whether we're really short-staffed or not, and we've got 560 people, but we're short-staffed, is that every time there's an emergency, we pull the COP officers out. And the COP officers, is someone very wise once told me, people don't become COP officers because they want to be, they want to be that sort of policeman. They don't want to be a detective or something else or undercover agent. So if you're a football team, you don't take the left tackle and make him the quarterback. And so if Lance's suggestions come into being, I think we need to make it so those COP officers can't be pulled out unless there's a board vote to go someplace else. And I think we need to start paying them an extra amount of money to a bonus to do it. That's the thing that we're missing right now if you look at our policing. And I'm not criticizing you or the chief, it's just a fact of life where we are right now. So I applaud Lance's suggestions. I applaud the thoughts of having a number of social workers or psychologists or somebody that goes with the police on these ventures, because that will really help. Now, I will differ from my friend Kathy in that I think functionality comes with safety of parks and that sort of issue. I will have to, just because I've been texted 3 times, for the mayor, the War Memorial Committee didn't vote on what they wanted to do. They just gave you some suggestions. So that was sent to me by 3 texts about that. So that at least now I've gotten that off my phone. But I am a firm believer in that partnerships are the only way we're going to make any strides in this city. And one of the things that happened since the Black Lives Matter is, as you know, is there's been a business group that's worked with your people to try to cite grocery stores that have been trying to raise a fund that you've been helping with for putting money back into the areas south of 630 and east of I-30. And partnerships are what make this city. And you know, one of the things that you and Antoine have been teaching me, even though it's a hard lesson, is that those silly scooters are something that young people want. But I think what they want more is they want safe activities in parks and different things like that, and they want a safe downtown. And I think that we are doing short shifting our downtown by what it did. So I sat down last night, and these numbers may not be completely correct, so just bear with me. I went by and I said, private funding and doing things downtown, and then I put public and I put refinancing, things that we voted on as a city, money that came out of the general fund, or things that we bonded. And just for an example, if you take the Arts Center, $30+ million that we voted on, but they're raising $100 million, which will stabilize that area and give us a great attraction. If you take the River Market, it was $4.3 million total, but the amount of money was $500,000 that we put in for the city. There are multiple things downtown that have been put in that we had no control over. Heifer, the developers downtown have put in over $500 million worth of buildings. That's apartments, high-rise buildings, and that sort of thing. The people that just, and I can go over the list ad nauseum, but just as an example, the people that we lease our two convention hotels to have put over $55 million into redoing our property to make it for people come to our city that spend money, that we generate cash, that do the things we need to be doing south of 630 and east of I-30. But you've got to have those partnerships, and you've got to have the trust that it's a wonderful thing to do. If you look at just one example in Riverfront Park, the Peabody Park was refinanced with $150,000, but Marty Bells gave us $250,000. I can go on and on and on, and I know y'all don't want to be here that long, but let me just give you some final numbers. Refinancing, we've refinanced about $650,000. We have voted in, and that is including the library, the MacArthur Park, the Tech Park, the Museum of Discovery, Robinson Center, almost $200 million. So that's money that we've put in, but the voters decided how they wanted to do that. We have bonded only two things, and that's the River Market deck and the Clinton Library. And if you get over to it, the bottom line is, and I've left out a lot of things. I left out the Simmons Arena, the two bridges, Dickey Stevens Park. I have no idea how much money they put into the Capitol Hotel. But if you just take my rough numbers, private investment downtown is $1.5 billion. So $1.5 billion. And our total public investment is about $211 million. But if you ask how much comes from the general fund, now there's maintenance of those areas and things like that, it's zero. So if we're going to make this a town that your friends want to come to and your friends want to come to, and we're going to make a safe downtown, and we're going to make a vibrant downtown, we need to spend money on promotion and protection of people downtown. Because if you look at what's happened in North Little Rock, they've got this little bitty area that they can patrol with two people in a golf cart. We start right out here on Main Street. We go all the way up to Soma. We go like a big arc over to what John Burkhalter's doing that everybody needs to go see. It's remarkable what he's putting in over on the river over there. And all of those areas need, in my opinion, more protection and promotion. There's money in there for that, but I would want to see at least $1 million a year in doing that, because if you make it safe and you make it viable and you make it where young people want to come and you make it where businesses want to continue to invest, then what you do is you make a city that is not only the bike trails that Cappy's trying to do, or the Big Dam Bridge, or the other things, but you make opportunities for learning and being. The second thing that I agree with Lance about is that the tech park brings a whole different clientele of people. And I told the mayor this term, and Jim Lawson told me this a long time ago, and Bruce will go, "Look," when I hear this, but density and diversity is what makes a city. And I think giving the tech park a third of the money that they need to raise the other $20 million, that brings a whole different group of people downtown all the time. And lastly, I think that one of the things that we did when we did the 2 cents on the A&P tax is we went into the MacArthur Museum and fixed it up and made it viable and helped the exhibits. I think it is a different type of museum than the Museum of Discovery. The Museum of Discovery is voted, or has been voted, one of the top 5 or 6 museums in the country. It is our only STEM education for kids in this city. It has over 100,000 visitors. And I think not giving them the $5 million that was in the original plan over 10 years is wrong. I think it's short-sighted on our part. So there are other things I can comment on, but my main thing is think about why we're not waiting to figure out how we can use the $37 million. Think about the investment that people have made in our city over the last 20 years, from the Clinton Library to developers who developed the towers, to the convention center, now to the East Village, to the first security amphitheater. All those people have pledged their money to help this community, and to not promote and protect it, I think, is wrong. And it is a big area, and it is a difficult area to look at. But the diversity of the area between what the Art Center is going to bring to Soma, to the River Market, to Main Street, to the East Village, to what John Burkhalter is doing, is what will make this community grow and will make people want to come. And to not look at that, in my opinion, as an engine to drive people here and to drive our economy is incorrect. And so I would urge us to look at that in a different way.
Director Pierce, thank you so much for sharing that information. We definitely take your comments under consideration. I do want to respond to some of your comments. Again, you said rush to vote. It's hardly a rushing to vote if this has been discussed since last year. And we reshared everything on March the 25th prior to having individual meetings with all of you, in addition to all the other community meetings that we've shared. Today is now April 27th, so it's hardly a rush to vote. I'm glad now that the board has decided to speak and share some commentary after being requested as we move to a vote on May the 4th. But we'll take under consideration some of the things that you have shared today. Again, as it relates to the $37 million, the $37 million cannot be used for many of the things that you've already shared as it relates to parks. Can't.
I
I'll let you.
agree with you
But
completely.
I'm still speaking, Director Pierce. And so want to make sure that we're aware on that from a $37 million standpoint. So that's the reason why, we still have to follow suit with those guidelines so we don't get ourselves into any trouble from that standpoint. As it relates to downtown, we agree. The downtown is a heart and soul of any kind of major city, and that's the reason why we've made so many different investments. But this proposal is to invest in the entire city, particularly to focus on areas that have been unserved and underserved, to ensure that we are paying attention to what's going on. Being someone who gets every phone call when there's a homicide, we've had 21. I can tell you that most of those are in defined areas that we're working towards, and we understand that. But also, one of the things that you worked on, and that I've also worked on as it relates to the downtown area, is the $5 million in annual funding for the ambassador program, which you shared is something that's sorely needed instead of the police officers. I want to make sure you know that's a recommendation that you made that we adhere to. So it's kind of, I'm kind of flummoxed when you say, you're kind of saying it's not safe when this is your recommendation. But
No, I didn't say it wasn't safe. I think it needs to be, to me, it is the jewel of our community.
Totally
It's what brings young people here. It's what drives the economy here. It's what brings people downtown here. It's what Gretchen is able to bring people here while they want to come here. It's got plans for expansion in a number of areas that you know about and I know about that don't want to be acknowledged yet. But all of those things are happening. But if we don't put money, in my opinion, into how we take care of it and how we protect it, is short-sighted. I think it's extraordinarily safe right now. The promotion part of it is people don't understand that. It's the safest, if you look at the crime statistics, it's the safest part of Little Rock.
And that's the reason why I was a bit flummoxed by your commentary. But again, as we've shared, we have that $5 million in addition to those operations that we are already spending in public safety. So thank you for that clarification. Director Pat?
Thank you. I will save a lot of time because Director Hines and Webb and Compuris have said a lot of what I wanted to say. And I guess I'm slow raising my hand. I'll start by saying, I feel like Ward 4 is almost an anomaly sometimes. When I first got on the board, Director Consort said, you know, Ward 4 is the most apathetic ward in the city. And that's wrong. It's not apathy. But we're right in the center of the city. We don't have a lot of the problems that other wards have. But I can tell you, we have vocal constituents. And during this process, I have been listening to my constituents, not just my constituents, to people all over town, because I see a couple hundred people a day. And I must agree with Director Webb that the two things that they're most concerned about are public safety and infrastructure. And I understand, Mayor, how much we're already spending on public safety. And I know we can have a conversation, well, is crime really up? Is it perception? Whether it's perception or reality, it is what's front and center on people's minds. And they're afraid to go to parks. They're concerned about going downtown. They're concerned about going out at night. You know, response times are too slow. 911 doesn't pick up fast enough. You know, all those things we all hear about. And so when people talk to me about the sales tax, the first thing they say is, and it's not necessarily more police, but it's a different way to address the reality or the perception, whatever you want to say, of the crime in the city. The second thing, infrastructure. I have far fewer problems than a lot of the wards have, but I still have them. I was happy to hear Director Vice Mayor Hines talk about the Rock Region funding and keeping more in the street fund. And I know that you added to infrastructure, which I'm appreciative of. I still don't think it's enough. I see a lot of people from all over different parts of the state and other states say, just man, the roads in Little Rock, they're just awful. And in pretty much every ward except the Western Expansion, we could use a lot more to address what Director Wyrick calls nuts and bolts. And I know the nuts and bolts aren't very sexy, but nuts and bolts are what my constituents are interested in. The other thing I wanted, to talk about, is what Director Kapuris was just talking about downtown. And I'll put on my old A&P hat, which I will never take off after serving on the A&P for 12 years. Whether it's leisure travelers, residents, business travelers, downtown is the heart of our whole community. And if it's not vibrant, then our city won't be. I fully agree with him about the Museum of Discovery. I love going there and seeing the school kids learn. They may not pay attention in school, but man, it gets their attention. And we have got to take care of the Museum of Discovery. It's an asset we should be proud of. They are in the top 6 STEM museums in the country. We've just got to show them some love, the way we've done it at MacArthur and the Art Center and other places. One idea that I would love to see us explored, I've talked to Director Phillips about this, because our downtown is so large and spread out, and because Charles Frazier is very creative, and I've had this conversation with him, a shuttle that maybe just ran on the weekends to connect Soma and East Village and downtown, and maybe go over to Central High, go to right here at the Historic Arkansas Museum. We have so many rich cultural institutions and arts institutes you could practically throw a rock at, but it's hard to get there. The tech park investment, you know, we want to attract young families. We have got to support them. They've got to build that second building. I'm fully supportive of that. A couple other things Vice Mayor Hines talked about that I really resonate with. The COP officers, again, not a big deal for me in Ward 4, but listening to Director Wyrick and Director Wright and Director Webb and Director Adcock, I know how important these are. Director Richardson, I know how important these people are in that part of our community. So I think we've got to do a better job there. Excuse me, I know I'm jumping around. Another major concern I hear from constituents is that this doesn't sunset. And people are really concerned, well, what if this doesn't pass? The 3/8 expires, and then what are we going to do? So a lot of people are questioning why it doesn't sunset. The other, Kathy touched on this briefly, talking about education and not specifically what Dr. Barth was saying, but the whole SEL model, which when I first got on the board, that was my first assignment from Director Webb. And I jumped in and studied the Louisville model and saw what we were doing in Little Rock. We had so much hope. We were making some progress, and it just disappeared. I'd love to reinvest and focus on the SEL model. Let's see, we talked about the ambassador program, some other things downtown. We need parking. We really need we need 2 decks. The other A&P portion that I'll never get out of my head is we love when people visit Little Rock because they're temporary taxpayers and it's heads and beds and butts and seats, and they're shopping in our stores and eating in our restaurants and staying in our hotels. And then they go home and tell people how great Little Rock is. So everybody wants to come here. And we're just, I think we've got to really address things more like the ambassador program, the decks, the amphitheater needs work. We've just got to take care of the huge private investment that's already been made there. Parks, that's a no-brainer for me. There's maybe a little bit of tweaking here and there, but that's what I'm hearing, Mayor, is public safety. And I understand how much we already spend. I get that. And I'm not saying it's just a matter of throwing more and more money after it. That's obviously not the solution, but that and infrastructure is what I'm hearing.
Thank you so much, Director Peck, and do appreciate you. And I know you are right. You get a chance to, while you represent Ward 4, get a chance to see a lot at Trios because a lot of folks go to your restaurant.
Oh, don't give me promotion. Somebody will say something bad about it. That place out there.
You just shared your conflict of interest.
Okay.
It's okay. It's not.
Okay.
But just a quick few things. Dr. J. Barth, will you, because I know this is the second time about SEL, and if you could clarify a few things.
Yeah, thanks. And this is a response to Director Webb and Director Peck. And Director Webb and I've had a series of conversations about the social emotional learning investment from the city. And that program is still very much alive. It has been delayed to some degree because we could not do the training, the professional development of staff because of COVID this year. That said, and so that's still out there, and we will pick that back up. And I'm in conversations with the district about that program in particular. But the district and I are very much focused on social and emotional learning, particularly in the community schools. The district had made a decision in several of those schools to go with a different social emotional learning program, the Leader in Me, which is a different model than the one the city had invested in. And so we are very much focused on social emotional learning in community schools. It is with a different model. That said, the city investment remains in place. And in fact, I was in conversations with Darian Smith, Executive Director of Elementary Education this week, about which school would be most appropriate for the model that the city has an investment sitting in place for. So that is very much not dead. We're spending a lot of energy and time. And I think as a result of COVID, and children's response to that, the need for social emotional learning is more pronounced than ever. And so we are going to need that city investment that was made with y'all's leadership in the past. We're picking it back up, but we just have not put it in place in the last year or so because of COVID, because we were ready to go with the training last fall, and then that was impossible because the trainers could not come into the school and train the employees. And all district employees got social emotional learning training because of how pronounced the tensions were last year. So I just wanted to be clear on where we were on social emotional learning.
Thank you on sharing your conversation with the superintendent of Little Rock School District. We do appreciate you. Did want to share, Director Peck, you mentioned parking decks. We actually have I'm sure you're aware, so that's included in the plan. So
There's one, right? Don't we need to?
No, ma'am. It's
Both of them?
It's 2.
For 13 million?
Yes, ma'am.
Are we getting to buy 2, get 1 free?
No, there's the plan to basically, I believe, 1 parking deck Mr. Moore's around 8 million, is it somewhere around, my memory correct?
Yeah, a little bit more, but
Yeah.
the thought was that, particularly one that's tied to the convention center, that there should be, as Director Campiris has talked about a lot today, a partnership, because they stand to do, you know, this, I think, really adds a lot of value to their property. And we're having those conversations, so I think that there, on one of them, that cost will be reduced. And we're in the middle of doing a parking study, or I say we're about to initiate a parking study in the River Market area with the free parking going away. As you know, we're going to have about a 15-acre park in the middle of downtown. And so I think there's a lot of possibilities on what parking might look like.
So thank you so much for Mr. Moore for making sure everyone's aware of that.
Mr. Mayor, I forgot one thing.
Yes, ma'am.
It's the homeless piece, and I am glad that we're addressing this. I'd like to know if we have any specifics, and I would direct anybody to Director Webb, because she's traveled to see so many different models, and I've seen a few myself, and with her being on the Jericho Way Board, and Vanguard Cities and all of that work. But I'm very hopeful about that. I would just like to know how that's fleshed out a little bit more.
Sure, and Mr. Moore, that's one of the things that he kind of really leads along with some other members of our team. Mr. Moore, you give an update on all the things that we're doing
To
for
Paul.
homelessness.
It is a combination of things. And a few, I don't know, a few months ago, Director Webb and I and others were on this call, and one of the national experts in this field said, you know, and actually somebody that works with us that said, you know, Little Rock, from a municipal standpoint, really does a good job as far as contributing resources to this work. And so we appreciated a compliment, but then the national experts said, you know, cities that really do a great job is not just managing it, but really solving it. And how you solve it is really one way. You get them into housing. And so there's a lot of discussion going on now with the coalition, with the Vanguard cities. I feel real good about the strategy on our Vanguard cities component. But it really is a component of making sure we can get people into some type of housing. The tiny homes concept is something that we've been looking at. And so, you know, in this, we've got $20 million, or in this proposal, is $20 million for affordable housing. And by using our city dollars instead of our grant dollars, and we'll have a little bit more flexibility on how we do that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moore. And then Director Peck, you also brought up Museum Discovery. We've met with Kelly Bass, and as you know, again, just a reminder from a budgetary standpoint, and Director Linehan, if you'll come up just so, or not, I think we already, let's not forget that we give Museum Discovery close to $200,000. I believe it's $195 annually. Is that correct? $195 annually. And so in this plan, we'll give an additional $225,000 annually, which makes up the $2.25 million. And Mr. Kelly Bass did come speak in support of this proposal as is. But again, we'll take consideration as we continue to move forward. And I appreciate that. As it relates to, so we talked about SEL, parking deck, Museum Discovery, the sunset, as I've shared with members of the board, I think we all are aware there's been a lot of research done, and the electorate has basically shared in a lot of different research that the sunset really doesn't matter. I think we have to be bold as a city. There's a lot of issues that we've been dealing with over the past, since I've been a kid. And we can't keep piecemealing different things. And so that's the reason why it's not set forth from a standpoint of a sunset, because whoever's here 10 years from now will be deliberating on the issues that we're discussing right now. We got to stop deliberating on the same issues that we've been dealing with for decades, and we're able to do that. We've already talked about before great hallmark cities like Oklahoma City that has their MAPS program and how that's basically not sunset as well. And we can continue on with other cities from that standpoint. So that's the reason why this proposal is not sunset from that standpoint. But hopefully, if this board allows the people to make a choice, I mean, that's literally what we're talking about. Is for this board is to allow the people to vote on the tax. This board, hopefully, this board will all work together to make sure that it is successful from that standpoint. But that's the general reason. We firmly believe to address systemic issues in our city across the entire city. This is the way to move forward to address that in a very transformative way as we focus on uniting, growing, and transforming our city together. As it relates to the tech park, we've also had meetings with the tech park. We'll take some different things under consideration. I would say one of the things with having the downtown Director Capers with definitely some empty buildings, there has to be some thought on how do we utilize the existing assets that we have within downtown for the tech park. But we definitely need the tech park to raise funds. And so that's something we haven't seen. Now, I'm sure that if you talk to Director Birch, there are some reasons why from that standpoint, and that's, we'll have some discussions on that. But that's the reason why it's not included due to the amount. I'll get to you, Director Computers, due to the amount from that standpoint. So that's the reason why it has not been included. But also, depending on guidance, we may figure out some other ways to address it as well. Some things don't have to be addressed in the sales tax if we're able to look it through. We have other financing arms, whether it's a short-term note, and depending on how much that would cost, we could address that as well. But until we get a firm plan, I don't know if we should be setting aside dollars for the tech part until we get a firm fundraising plan that we've yet to see. But I do know they are working on trying to get that together, irrespective of the sales tax, because we do have the opportunity to look at a short-term note. There may be some other, you never know what may come down a pipeline, not only in the American Rescue Plan. We also know the infrastructure definition is very broad in the current federal administration for the looming infrastructure plan. So I think there'll be some opportunities that the city can weigh in, irrespective of the sales tax, to help the tech park if they come to the table with dollars in hand. Because this board, many members of the board, I guess except for Directors Peck and Director Webb, voted to give the people the opportunity to fund those 20, and Director Phillips as well, from that standpoint.
Could I just say one thing on that?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
promised the last, well, I'm not going to promise.
No, it's your turn.
Okay. And I just want to say, and see, Antoine, we're talking, and don't hate me, y'all, but we all love Little Rock. I mean, we all serve this place because we love it and we want it to be a better city for everybody. We've got to work together, and this is how it's going to happen. And Mayor, we all need to get behind this to be cheerleaders, because there's still a lot of people that think any tax is regressive or we already paid
Yes,
too
ma'am.
much. So let's all be positive and keep our eye on the prize, which is to make this the best place it could be for all of us.
Yes,
Let's-
ma'am.
Let's, I'm sorry, kumbaya. No, just kidding.
People get mad at that. We totally agree. We totally,
But,
we totally agree.
but I, and so I hear every time somebody says public safety and infrastructure, I'm going, okay, we already spend this much and we already have this much, but I'm telling you what I'm hearing. So
Yeah.
if I'm going to sell it, I've got to do a better job.
No. And we hear as well. And so, just like you hear a lot of folks, I'm around the entire city and represent the entire city. And so I'm hearing as well. So no one's saying that we don't want to do anything. I mean, we have to be reminded that we spend $150 million a year on public safety, and we're talking about adding another close to $70 million a year for public safety. And we also know that we're going to have a study that should be completed by June that may say we need to shift some of the existing personnel to 594 in certain areas. We may have some more jobs that needs to be civilianized and transition elsewhere. So we're totally on one accord. Director Computers, you had one comment, then we'll have to get back to the order. No comment? All right. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Director Webb. You're totally on one accord. Whatever happens.
I'm Director Peck.
Heck, I apologize.
Hey.
It's not the first time that's happened. I apologize.
I love it.
Yeah. Thank you, Director Webb, over there. That was,
all right.
that was intentional.
Oh, okay.
But thank you so much from that standpoint. I believe Director Wyrick. You're next.
Okay. Well, one of the first things on my list was, I think this ought to sunset. The tax ought to sunset. I'm also concerned about the date of election. I don't know why we don't do it in the general election. For me, there's not enough nuts and bolts, and Mayor, you and I have had conversations about this, so
Yes,
none of
ma'am.
this is new to you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The nuts and bolts have to do with public safety, infrastructure, and our neighborhoods. And as you and I talked today, concerned about the crime, concerned about the homicides that are going on. And the chief says that conflict resolution is what we need in order to fix that. And so in our public safety area, we need to figure out what he needs to resolve the conflict resolution. And I don't know if we've got the money in the right places to take care of that. The other thing I've learned through the years working with the police department that aggravated assaults occur, and that's the next thing to happen if you don't get that under control is homicides. And so a couple of years ago, I think we used the COP officers in order to try to resolve some of that aggravated assault situations. It diffused the process, and possibly we didn't have homicides. As I shared with you earlier, I believe that we need the COP officers. We've never had our full complement of COP officers in however many years I've been on the board. We've been promised, but if there's a special issue that comes up, then they're always pulled and put on something else. So I don't know what the story is on the COP officers right now, but I do believe that they are important, as Lance indicated earlier. The police and fire, I already talked about what the chief might need to work with the homicide situation and the high crime. And I understand that the smaller offenses, those that are less than $200, those are down. And it's like we've all said, everybody's at home. And so the burglaries and things like that are not as high. But the type 1 offenses are the ones that are really over the top. The fire department, I've had some phone calls from them, and they need fire trucks. They need apparatus. And I think you and I talked about the possibility of maybe working that out.
Yes, ma'am.
That they might get them. The neighborhood programs, we passed a resolution a couple of months ago that talked about targeted communities. And I know the sponsors of that, as well as myself, have different areas in their community that we feel like that they need extra help. And I would like to see some funding toward that targeted communities concept. And I know that's new to you, but I've talked about neighborhoods all the way through. The other piece of this that I want to talk about, and I know you're going to say, well, we've talked about this for over a year, but everybody on this board, when we passed the 2011 sales tax, knew the meat of the proposal. We could go to any neighborhood association and say, you're going to get this, you're going to get this, you're going to get this, you're going to get a fire station on Stagecoach Road, you're going to get this street improved, all the different aspects of the sales tax. No, yeah, we're going to get a new 911 center for the police department, and we knew it all. I don't know the nuts and bolts, I'm sorry about that term, but I don't know the intricacies of the sales tax. So I don't know if you plan, if this passes, if you plan on going to every meeting, every location to sell this tax, or if you want all of us to help with it. And if you do, then we need specific details as to how this is going to happen. Talked about economic development, and y'all talked about two high-rise parking decks. I didn't know about that till today. So there's aspects that you have put together that you know intimately, but we don't know it all. And so, I feel like that we need to know the different details. We had a resolution or an ordinance that stated, everything that we were going to do. We didn't have like bullet points where 12% goes to infrastructure and, 9% goes here. We had specific details. The other thing, and this is my last item, I know you increased infrastructure, but when we look at strategic infrastructure improvements and we look at street resurfacing, in Ward 7, I need more than resurfacing. I need streets dug out. I need foundations made. I need new streets built. And with the 2011 sales tax, I was able to do a number of collector streets. And I know we want to get to residential, but you got to get out of your subdivisions before you can do the residential streets. Well, the collector streets that are left that I have in Ward 7 have to have massive construction. They got to buy right away. They got to dig deep, put bases in there. That's a very expensive proposition. So I'm still, even though you were generous to increase it to 12%, I still don't feel like that's enough. And I know the others that have talked about infrastructure are going to feel the same way. They're going to have some other streets that fall into that. And drainage, we have never been able to tackle the drainage projects because we had so many streets that we had to take care of. I've got a number of tributaries that overflow. There's people's property there, their houses flood. It's like a routine thing that we need to put some money into that in order to help those people or buy their property, one or the other. So I think I covered everything that I had on my list.
Yes, ma'am. And thank you so much, Director
I
Wyrick.
think that's it.
Because you and I do talk often, so I do appreciate, because much, like you said, some things, but
I think the only new thing was the targeted.
right, yeah, the only thing.
But I got to thinking about, well, how can we work with neighborhoods? And I know we all have locations that we feel like really, really need the extra help. And that's the reason why we did the resolution for the targeted communities.
Totally agree, and that's on today's agenda as well. So this is not directed towards Director Wyrick because we do visit a lot. And she shared a lot, so a lot of this is not new. But Director Wyrick, you shared that the park index was new to you. We've been talking about this since March 25th, and we've had every member of the department directors to go through this, and it's factual that we've gone through that and shared that information. So,
Well, I must have been asleep because today is the first day that I realized that we were building 2 parking decks. Did everybody else know that? Did John?
shared it. I mean, we can pull up we can pull it up on a tape.
I must have been worried about nuts and bolts, so I apologize for that.
So no problem.
My point is that there's so many widgets to this proposal, and it's hard for us to know everything in order to go to the field, to the neighborhoods and the communities and tell them.
No, I agree.
I had a story that I told whenever we did the 2011 sales tax. I worked at Department of Information Systems. There was a penny that was laying in the parking lot. And I walked by that penny for 2 weeks. Nobody bothered to pick it up. And I said, that's what we're pushing, is a penny. So, I want to be on board. I want to help, but I think these are some things that need to be addressed. Thank you.
No, thank you. And as you and I, as we visited, the things that you shared for consideration, just like we were able to increase infrastructure, we do hear that you want to see a little bit more towards infrastructure. We did address, as you and I have been talking about the fire apparatus, but Chief Hubbard, if you could come give us just a brief update, some of the things that the executive administration has been working with you as it relates to fire apparatus and
Good evening, Mayor and members of the board. As it currently stands, as I stated to the board previously, by its national standards, fire apparatus should be replaced from frontline positioning to reserve status after 15 to 20 years. So you got that window. As we currently stand on the Little Rock Fire Department, we have over 30%, maybe 40% of our frontline equipment is beyond that, where it should be in reserve status. and then it only should stay in reserve status 5 years.
How many
Yeah.
trucks is that?
Excuse me?
Is it 5 or 6 trucks that you need to replace? What's the number of the vehicles that you need to replace?
As it currently stands, we're somewhere around 15.
15,
Yes,
okay,
that could be moved from frontline to reserve status.
okay.
Yes. So we have quite a few pieces of apparatus. As we all know, they do have a cost tag to them. As it is now, we are in the process of, with the mayor's approval, we are in the process of purchasing, and we'll bring that before the board here within a certain amount of time. We are in the process of replacing one of our ladder trucks at a cost of $1.5 million.
They're expensive.
Yes, they do have a serious price tag to them. So as we know, it's going to cost quite a bit to start and implement our replacement plan.
And that's the reason also why we have the dollars associated with the public safety vehicle replacement plan, as we're working with fleet, because working with fleet from a police and a fire standpoint, from that standpoint. So that's the reason what those dollars are going towards. That was also already shared. So thank you so much, Director Warwick, on the targeted community development. We may get a chance to talk about that later, because that's part of the policy meeting for today. We got that, so we'll spend a little bit more time there.
Just need money.
Yes, ma'am. Just need money, just a little bit of money. So thank you, Director Warwick. Director Adcock,
Yes,
and then we have Director Richardson coming after that.
I have never
I
seen.
had my hand raised too, Mayor, just for the record.
Okay, I'm sorry. Director Adcock, I'm
Skipped me
sorry.
a couple of times. I let it slide, but I'm gonna let it slide this time too for Director
Director
Adcock.
Phillips finishes.
No, I'm deferring to you. I just want the mayor to know that he was skipping me, but I defer to you, Director Adcock.
You ready?
Are you coming for me? Let's go. I'm ready.
Okay.
They say always be ready. You never got to get ready.
Y'all are funny.
Okay, since 1994, I've never seen as much fear in the people of this city. The gangs was bad back then, but I think what we have now is even worse because they have been closed up for a year. They're not only fear of their life, they're fear of all these gunshots, they're fear of other people. And we have a lots of particularly seniors that just have not come out their house in a year now. In December 31st of 2019, we was all looking forward to 100 new police officers. And then December 31st of 2020, we was looking forward to our COP officers coming back to our neighborhoods. And then we was asked just to wait a little while longer, wait a little while longer. COP officers is something that unless you was in Little Rock before we had COP and then you saw what a difference they made, it's hard to understand what they added to our community. I went to a neighborhood meeting last night and they wanted speed bumps because they want to slow people down their neighborhood because they're afraid to say anything to them about speeding. But the number one thing after speed bumps was public safety. They talk about all the gunfire they hear all night long, coming from Hyman Park, coming from Meadowcliff, coming from this place in our neighborhood and other places. And when I asked them do you call it in, they said there's no use calling it in anymore because even the officers say, well, we're trying the best we can. This morning, there was 42 vacancies in our patrol division. By this afternoon, there was another one because another officer quit today. His last day is the last day of this month. And Mayor, we're falling more and more and more behind with our officers. Yes, we may have the number, the total, but we're moving them into special places and people do not see them on the streets. And that's where we need to have them. We're looking at this caravanning now. And the people last night, because someone brought up that we had just passed the caravanning and the watching how people drives. And they said they didn't care. They wanted to see the officers in their neighborhoods and on their streets. So I think that unless we can add something to public safety, and I think one day you said, well, we're adding 10 more officers. 10 more officers plus 11 officers that we're going to graduate, that still is not going to make up for 43 officers. And my last thing I want to ask you, do you have the support of the FOP and the fire union for this initiative?
Thank you so much, Director Adcock. Director Linehan, if you would, please approach. Director Adcock, this is the second time that you've shared inaccurate information. Now, I'm not aware of someone resigning today, but as of last week, the number of vacancies that we have for the Little Rock Police Department is 34. We have our CFO.
Excuse me, Mayor. I got this number this morning from the chief's office, and I do not appreciate you questioning every time I speak that I have inaccurate information, because I made sure this morning that this was this morning's number, and 2 hours later, they called me and said, oh, one more has quit.
So again, Director Adcock, I'm sorry you don't appreciate me sharing accurate information, because you may have got it from the chief office, but if you didn't get it from Chief Humphrey or the assistant chiefs, I can't verify that, but we do have our CFO.
Mayor, I don't know the exact vacancy count today. I do know the last time that the vacancy count was quoted, there was misunderstanding that there had been 7 officers added in the budget. There were not. In the budget presentation, it was clearly stated that we were using a COPS grant for the replacement of 7 officers. And so the total count that was being used to come up with the vacancy was inflated because they thought those were additional headcount as opposed to replacing existing authorized positions. And that's where the 401 number came up instead of the 500, or the 601 officers instead of 594 that were authorized.
And I believe you're speaking to the VOCA Violence Against Crime grant, about 6 or 7 folks that we've yet to hire just yet. That adds to the 34, that makes that number. So just wanted to correct the information. So thank you so much, Director
Mayor,
Lance.
this is police officers on patrol that are short. And if you want to continue to tell me that I do not know what I'm talking about, and inaccurate information means a liar, and I do not appreciate that. And I will be leaving this meeting.
Well, I hope you have a good evening, but we're going to always share accurate information. We'll now move from Director Adcock to Director Phillips.
Yes, sir, Mayor, but I did recognize it. I didn't know if the chief had anything that he walked to the podium, so I didn't know if you want to.
No, we're fine.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and I want to acknowledge my board members and especially the closest person to me to my right, Director Peck, for her responding that we're talking now, and I appreciate that. This is a meeting. As a elected official, my understanding of our roles is to share things and learn from one another. We all have different perspectives, different experiences. Different people talk to me, then talk to Director Webb, and different people talk to Director Webb, then talk to Director Wyrick. So we're hearing different things. So us sharing those thoughts with each other is definitely important. There's a few things I want to address to our colleagues. One, when Director Hines started, he mentioned me by name, saying, Director Phillip asked us why we hadn't been talking, that's not a word, why we haven't been talking. And I wrote it down. He said, our silence was deafening. Our silence was deafening. And he said, our. And that made me think, were people talking and they wasn't including Antoine? That was my first thought. And then he listed a number of things, and my friend and Director Computers, who everyone know I have a great relationship with, been a mentor of mine. I'll say that publicly for a while. Probably when I went to law school without having a conversation with Dean Computers years ago. But he said, and I wrote this down, I applaud Lance Hines' suggestions. I agree with Director Hines. My friend to the right of me, Director Peck, said, I'm gonna keep it short because everyone said what I was going to say. And Thursday, and I pulled it up, there was an article in the Arkansas Times that pretty much outlined exactly what Director Hines told us today. So I'm concerned, and maybe I'm too sensitive, maybe I'm too naive, maybe I'm too young. But I want to be a part of the conversation. Apparently, we all agree, or some of us agree, and applaud what Lance has put in front of us that I didn't know anything about until reading the Times article. So I wanted to put that in the record. Director Hines said, and I kind of want to just talk about a few things further. When we started this process, I said that I'm supportive of the framework because I know that our city needs these resources and we need to invest in our city. With that being said, I wanted to hear from y'all because I didn't think this was a perfect plan. There's no perfect plan. It's our job to have the conversation that we're having today and say, well, you know, that's too much over there. We need to put a little more over here. And I'm happy that now I can hear that. And there were some things said today that I completely agree with that hadn't been discussed before. Director Hines talked about maybe we put a little more money for social workers. That sounds good to me. Director Wyrick said, you know, maybe we put a little more money to the targeted community development. That sounds good to me too. So maybe there are things in here that we can adjust that I'll be agreeable with. But there are some questions. And again, I said this a few weeks ago, and I said this, I think, back in February when someone came here and talked about a car wash. I think we should be talking. And this is not just about the sales tax. This is about me learning from my colleagues, really being the newest person here, learning from your experience, learning from your perspective. But I can't get that if we're not talking to one another. So I'm going to address some of the things that my colleagues said. Director Hines mentioned, he said, we need at least $25 million a year for police officers. I'm a big basketball fan. And every year around February when there's an all-star game, people make the all-star team, and then there's a snub list. They say, man, who should have made the all-star team? Well, he should have made it. He should have made it. And then the question always is, well, if he was going to make it, who shouldn't have made it? Right? So if you're going to put somebody on, you got to take somebody off. If we're going to move 25 million, unless you're going to raise the 1 cent sales tax, somebody not on the team anymore. So I would like to know if that's the proposal for 25 million for police officers, then where's it coming from? We just can't say we want to put Antoine on the all-star team without taking someone off the all-star team. So I would like to hear something in that regard. Also, to Director Adcock's point about the police officers, I don't know the exact numbers, but I do know that there's decline in people trying to be police officers. She said people are leaving today. So we're going to put 25 million allocated for something that we can't get people to do the job? People are not signing up to be police officers like they used to be. I think that's something we need to consider. And I'm, as an at-large member, I share constituents with all of you. So all of your constituents are my constituents. And no one has told me they want more police officers. Not a single person, not in a text, a phone call, a Facebook message, an IG message, not one. So I want that to be in the record too. I know some people saying that's what they're hearing. That's not what I'm hearing as a large member of this city. Another thing, I got notes here. Someone mentioned about the people having an understanding of what's going on in this tax. I think what's important for our constituents that are watching, to make sure it's clear, we're not voting to pass the tax. We're voting to give you an opportunity to decide whether you want this tax or not. That's our job. And I know it's our job to kind of figure out what we present to people, but let's not get in the way of the people of the city of Little Rock making a decision on whether they want to invest in our city. My colleague, Director Webb, said, she mentioned functionality and safety. And we got to work on the basics. I agree. You got to take care of the basics, Director Webb. But when I ran for office, and I think the people who voted for me because I believe that we can do better than the basics. And the basics are important. And I'm not disregarding anyone's request for more infrastructure or additional dollars for public safety to help our existing officers do their job even more efficiently. But we got to move past the basics. Our city is better than basic. I don't want to live in a basic city. My friends, my family don't want to live in a basic city. We can do better than the basics. Another thing I heard people mention is that sometimes we get so caught up on doing one thing at a time. We're a smart, innovative, big enough city where we can fix a pothole and invest in early childhood education. This is not an either or. Let me keep going. And to the point, I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, Director Computers. This may be the meeting when you were out of town. But legally speaking, as it relates to the American Rescue Plan dollars, during 2020, in my legal experience representing clients and their access to PPP dollars, a lot of our clients received funding, got the money, spent the money, then different guidance came out, and we have to try to redirect them in light of that. So my opinion, and I agree with Director Linehan in that regard, we need to have a complete understanding of what to do with those dollars. And to me, that's a separate calculation as it relates to the sales tax vote. We are fortunate enough to receive some money from the federal government, but that does not change our ongoing obligation to invest in our city and continue to create a better Little Rock. Someone mentioned if there was a CLP officer riding a bicycle at the park, would that have prevented what happened to Miss Wright's son on Sunday? I don't know how many CLP officers we think we're gonna have to hire to put them on every corner in every park, 24 hours, 7 days a week. And I think I've heard Director Richardson say this before, maybe even before I was on the board. We can't police our way out of this problem. There's no, unless we're going to hire 1 million police officers, which I don't think that's in the budget. We cannot police our way out of this problem. And what you heard the mother say today is that we need investment in the communities. The people who spoke a couple weeks ago related to violence in their lives talked about investment in the community. I don't think, and I took notes, I got the notes here. I don't think any of them said, you know what we need? More police. I don't think anyone said that. And these are the people who are being affected directly by what's happening. Let's be mindful and be responsive to the people in our city. I too am a big fan of downtown. I work downtown, spend a bunch of time downtown. I agree downtown is the heart of our city. And our city doesn't work without having a vibrant, invested downtown. But if we're going to use the city as a body analogy, if downtown the heart, there's other parts of this body that need to be taken care of. You can have a good heart, but if you got a bad brain, a bad spine, bad feet, a bad cardiovascular system, it doesn't work. So let's take care of our heart. I agree, downtown, but we need to also focus on other parts of the city's body as well. Another thing I mentioned, Director Computers, you mentioned a lot of private partnerships with the downtown. I hadn't seen those type of investors on Guy Springs or Asher, John Barrow and Director Wright's ward, East End, where we were at yesterday, walking through Cheatham Park. And we can't make private investors, they get to put their dollars where they want to, and I'm not mad about that. But we as public servants have an obligation to invest in other parts of the city that may spur that investment. The same thing that happened with downtown when the city put some money up to help with the river market, then you was able to get the Clinton Library. Then you was able to get all these other things because the city realized that was important. And once the city put up, other people put up. That part to me is not complicated. And when I say put up, that's slang for funding. When we fund certain parts of town, private investors come. You talk about public-private partnerships all the time. I think that's the same thing that needs to happen throughout all parts of the city. I think it was Director Capiers, or maybe Director Peck said this about the 911 Operations Center. I've had people contact me too about the efficiency of 911. So I agree too. Maybe there we need to do some additional funding to make sure that that center is working more efficiently. Maybe we readjust some numbers there as well. So there are things that have been said today that I definitely agree with. See what else I have here, Mayor. Y'all bear with me while I look at my notes. Oh yeah, this is the last thing. I wasn't here in 2011 as an elected official, so I can't speak to what we did then. But I want to talk about what we will do in the future. I'm here because I know what we've done in the past, but I want to talk about what Little Rock can be, not what it has been. We can't expect our city to look and feel different unless we act different, invest different. And I think that's where our focus should be on how to improve things going forward. With that being said, I'm still, Mayor, still supportive of the tax. There are a few things that I heard today that I would like you to consider was the 911 operations. I know we're going to talk about the targeted community development, so there may be some answers there that I want to hear. Director Hines mentioned additional social workers. I think that's something for us to consider as well. But I would like to end it, Mayor, with asking Director Hines, where would he like the 25 million to come from? If Director Hines will indulge me and answer that question.
Vice Mayor Hines.
Sure, I've got it right here in the spreadsheet.
You have one from, can I have a
Oh,
copy?
yeah, I'm gonna pass them out to
Okay,
everybody.
perfect.
So, here. This is just a spitballing of taking the mayor's, it may be a little hard to read, but I'll email you out the spreadsheet after the session's over with.
Yeah, I can hear this out of the room.
Should be enough. There's lots of ways to remeasure, taking some of it away from the zoo for their capital, early childhood development. You can look at it, have further discussion. And the 25 million was 2.5 million a year over 10 years for new COPP dedicated officers above our authorized force of 571, 2 social workers, and reinstituting the $5,000 incentive for resident LRPD recruits. So you would kind of figure out what the 2 social workers, what that incentive would project out, and then what you'd have left over would be how many COPP dedicated officers we'd have for that 25 million. And what I did was I went in and basically delineated, and you know, you guys always want to talk about the past in a bad way. I'm part of our past and I'm part of our future, and this city would look like a much different place had we not all gotten together and passed the previous tax. If you want to know how we did it, I can tell you how we did it. The way this is going down is not how you get a tax passed with majority board support. And you don't have that support right now.
Well,
period. And if we don't amend this in some fashion that the whole city can get behind, it's not going to pass, and I'm not going to support even putting it on the ballot.
I disagree.
Go ahead.
Can I respond to Director Hines? Thank you, Director Hines, for that. And I don't talk about the past in a bad way, but I do know that nostalgia can be the enemy of the vision. I repeat that. Nostalgia can be the enemy of the vision. So we get so caught up on what we did in the past, we can't even look towards the future. And that's where I'm coming from. I'm not questioning anyone's work in the past. Y'all made investments in the city that allowed me to grow up here and love this city, to become the man that I am, the professional that I am in the city. So I'm not negating that. But just because something worked in the past doesn't mean it works today. Just something was good in the past doesn't mean it can be better today. And that's where I'm coming from. And you said you not going to get this passed, and you looked at me. I didn't present the sales tax, Director Hines. So this is the mayor's presentation, just for clarity. But I am supportive of the framework. And looking here, it looks like, and this is consistent with what I read on the Times article, Director Hines, it looks like we had about, it looks like there's 40 million, and I'm just not looking at this, 40 million missing from,
Early childhood education.
is that right?
Mr. And Director Phillips, just because I read that Times article too, and as I quickly perused this, it looks exactly like the Times article. And you shared you haven't had any meetings. It sounds like there have been members of the board that have been meeting together, which is improper, but we won't go through that.
Mayor, I handed out this spreadsheet to several board members last week just to get their thoughts on what I thought you could
Well,
produce.
look, if I can, Mayor. Well, thank you for doing the work, Director Hines. I guess my question is, and again, I'm trying to learn from you, and I hope I can share some things that you can learn from me. And we do what Director Peck said, which is work together to make our city the best it can be. So in your opinion, can you tell me why, I don't even see that early childhood education on here, Director Hines. Can you tell me what line number it is?
Director Phillips, as my previous comments, I don't think that's something the city of Little Rock should be doing with the sales tax.
Okay, so you took it out completely?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I put 5 million of it to targeted, as we passed by our resolution, targeted community development initiative.
Okay.
I mean, you can, I'm not going to sit here and debate that. This is my proposal of what I think the sales tax should look like.
No, I know you presented. I'm trying to get an understanding of where you coming from with your proposal. I want to have a better understanding of that, and that's why I asked the question.
You still have some more questions, Director Phillips?
No, I'm gonna look at this. I may come back, Mayor. Thank you.
Well, I will share just because we're looking at the information that's largely similar to the Arkansas Times article. Clearly, there was some meeting going on. I just wouldn't think that Director Webb, who's on the Zoo Board of Governors, would like that type of cut that we see in the zoo. Clearly, we've talked about early childhood education, even with the affordable housing, things of that nature. Thank you so much for sharing this example. This is not an amendment at all. We'll have a final vote. Again, it takes 6 votes to pass the ordinances. It takes 6 votes to pass the resolution. And I can share with you right now, Director Hines, that this is not something that will be favorable or even passable. But as we'll share later, that we will spend time because we did receive a lot of feedback, and we got one more feedback from Director Richardson. And we will take this feedback, and we're happy to get the feedback finally from this members of the board after laying this out on March the 25th. So we're happy to finally get the feedback. What we'll do is take everything that's been under consideration, because I just know certain aspects of this just wouldn't be passable whatsoever from that standpoint, but we will take the feedback and rework the existing resolution. And I think that's part of this process. That's the reason why we've been asking for feedback and asking for commentary. I hate that it took this long to get to this point, to get this kind of feedback from members of the board, but we're here. That's in the past. We're in the present right now. We're going to take these things under consideration and try to see if we can make some changes to the existing resolution that fits and aligns with uniting, growing, and transforming our city to truly rebuild it out of this pandemic and rebuild it for the future. as we focus on innovation and not stagnation. Director Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank all of my colleagues for your wonderful comments and insightful comments. I think Director Phillips, I think sometimes we all hear and see things through different lenses and different filters. Sometimes we hear what we want to hear and see what we want to see. And sometimes the things we hear and see only has a meaning that we choose to give it. So I didn't have that degree of certainty that my colleagues had in 2011. I think I was the only one of the sitting board members at that time who voted against that, if I'm not correct. I think Director Hendrick voted present. But I want to talk about this whole notion of violence and how we resolve violence. And I think you're right, Director Phillips. We cannot police our way out of this, guys. We cannot. And I said it having worked in the streets, doing community work with Reverend Anderson. I think he was real modest because he's done some wonderful, wonderful work on the street with the foundation and juvenile court. I remember one Friday night we were shot at in Hollingsworth. The Saturday night we were shot at in East End. And I think that Sunday night we were shot at in Highland Court. Monday, Reverend Anderson's wife said he need to get a new job and become a preacher. I mean, he literally, he had to get another job because his wife could not handle that. So we had people out there doing the intervention work, Lance, the social work you're talking about. But I think we need to redefine how we address public safety. The one thing I noticed during that work at that time was gangs and crime were strongest where community was weakest. Both of those were strongest where community and sense of community was weakest. And we need to redefine how we address public safety through community building. We look at certain parts of our community that have these common denominators that are not positive by any means, and we do not look at those in a proactive way. Whenever we talk about public safety, unfortunately, we're always talking about it in a reactive way. We're not talking about chess, we're talking about checkers. And I think that's unfortunate for the families who are losing loved ones, and I think it's unfortunate for the progress or lack of progress that we're making. But we cannot police our way out of this, guys. I'm going to tell you this. Having been working on the street for a while, and I think what we're seeing now, Mayor, and I think Bruce has left out, we're seeing what's crept back into the mindset of young people that was there in 93. Then we had our record year of homicide. That was the year 50 Little Rock was passed. 93 was the year we had the record year of homicides in the city of Little Rock. And at that time, young people had this dangerous combination of fearlessness and hopelessness. I don't care how many police you put out there on the street. If I don't have any hope or anything, it's not going to factor into my judgment. It's not. And I know that from working with young people. And I know that if we can draw a box around this city and almost with some degree of certainty predict where the next homicide is going to come from, we can look at some demographic information and almost predict the characteristics or demographics of the next victim and suspects. We know it. We've seen it. We hear it. We see it in our schools. We see it in our community. But to suggest that we're going to solve this by hiring more police officers, I don't think that's the case. And I think I agree with everybody who made reference to the COP officers. That did have a great impact because we had opportunities to set up what we call a Bridging the Gap basketball series, where we had COP officers play basketball games with gang members, active gang members. So they got to see themselves in different lights, interact in different lights, see each other in different lights, more than what they saw just the street-based interaction. How we police our city is something we need to look at as well. Some parts of Little Rock we protect and serve. Other parts of Little Rock we patrol and control. So the people that you think would be the happiest when we talk about adding more police officers, they're the ones, oh, no, not anymore. Those are the places, unfortunately, and ironically, where we have the worst community-police relationships. Is that coincidental? Does that happen? I mean, I don't know how that happened. I went to the Citizen Police Academy in 1993, 1994. And there are ways that we need to figure out addressing public safety beyond more police. And then we talk about public safety and violence. We keep going to this lowest common denominator. Listen, there's economic violence. There's political violence. There's all sorts of forms of violence in our city and our country. Now, sometimes they devolve down to the lowest common denominator, but violence is much bigger than what we're seeing played out in our community. There is economic violence. There is political violence. There is a lack of diversity violence in our city. And to expect the police department to address all of those, that would be idiotic at best and hopeful at worst. I think it's disingenuous for us to think that we can get ourselves out of the situation by adding more police officers. I think that we need to look at those areas where these things are happening and look at those common denominators and address those things and do it in the community building fashion where we're doing it proactively. It makes sense. And I think Bruce was here, Mayor, when he was an intern when we started this approach. When we started trying to involve ourselves and engage ourselves in these communities where people who live in those communities knew those people who were committing the acts and vice versa. And we would train those folks to get them actually trained enough and enough technical assistance so they could be equipped to use those set of skills and use what they already had, their knowledge of the community, to go out and make a difference through recruitment, enrichment, and empowerment. It was common sense. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out, guys. Let's look at where the crime is happening in Little Rock. Let's take a look at it. We can almost draw a box around it. And every now and then, here's where the selective outrage comes in. Sorry, man, I'm going to calm down. The selective outrage comes in when something happens outside that box. So we've selectively become outraged. I remember 2018, I don't want to do this tonight, but I remember we had a shooting downtown in the club a few months before, and the mayor Stoller had an emergency press conference. And then a couple of weeks later, that following weekend, we had 5 homicides over one weekend, including a triple homicide that involved 3 young ladies under the age of 19. We didn't say one single solitary word about that night. We spent an hour and a half talking about First Tee. The previous year, we had a triple homicide, DJ, involving a young lady and her 2 kids in our ward. Item Ward 7. Ward 2, 7. When the good things happen is Ward 2, and the bad things is Ward 7. That's an inside joke, Bruce. A triple homicide. Nothing was said at all. We had a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old get killed in the same month in separate shootings. Nothing said. So this selective outrage, I think it's offensive. It's insulting to a lot of the families who are suffering in our city, who are looking to us for help. And I don't think we're going to be able to police our way out of it. And Bruce's whole notion, I agree, that we need to figure out ways to encourage police officers to live here. I don't agree with the incentive approach because the incentives are the paychecks they take home. I did notice something recently. I don't know if Chief Humphrey is still in here, but Chief Buckner, who opposed residency requirement while he was chief here, just worked out a deal with the city council in Syracuse, New York, to have residency for all new police officers for the first 5 years of their employment. They give them housing incentives, but they just passed the exact same thing he fought that we're pushing for here. I think that's how you become a part of the community. That's how you become more engaging of the community, and you don't be seen as an occupier in the community. And I think there's both sides of the story we need to look at and figure out ways to come together. But just adding more police, that's the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results. We're not going to police our way out of this. It's not going to happen, guys. And I'm always out of tune with the choir, but it's not going to happen. And I know that from having worked directly with young people. I know that from having done research, Mayor. I know that from working with people who work with young people. I know that from being out in the community. It's not going to happen. And like Director Phillips said, you can put 1 million police officers out there on every corner. If those young people have this dangerous combination of hopelessness and fearlessness, it's not going to matter. They're going to still continue to do these idiotic, insane acts because they're culturally abnormal. They're culturally abnormal that have been turned or morphed into norms, community norms. That's a whole other part of community investment. I think, Mayor, your point about Dean helping us, I appreciate you doing this, helping us address some of the infrastructure needs and some of the private sector investment south of 630. I think the city's done a wonderful job with public sector investment south of 630. We haven't done the same with the private sector. We have too many food deserts, too many financial deserts, disproportionate number of convenience stores, liquor stores. We have one of the highest childhood obesity rates you can find in this country. Those are the community building things we're talking about. Disproportionate number of boarded up homes, demolished homes, vacant, unsafe homes. Disproportionate number of people coming back from the penitentiary system. We don't have adequate resources to do any kind of reentry programs to help them rebuild their own communities. And that's not thinking outside the box. Sometimes when I say things like this, who are you thinking outside the box? I know I'm just trying to move the clock up and get us to catch up. we're a couple hours behind. And I think we got resources, I think we got creativity, I think we got the smarts. We just need to develop the will to address these things in a different way. We should be and could be identifying resources to employ those ex-felons to help rebuild, help rehab, help redevelop some of those boarded up vacant homes. And perhaps even Director Webb and I have been talking lately about developing community gardens for those food deserts. Those are some of the things, we just can't say let's hire more police officers, it's gonna go away, because it's not gonna happen. So I appreciate the comments and the passion of everyone who's spoken. And I respectfully agree on some of them. I respectfully disagree on others. I think this conversation, Mayor, is helpful. I think you've heard some interesting comments from some of my colleagues. I didn't have that higher degree of certainty when Stoller presented Vision Little Rock 2011. I was the only one who voted against it. I think Director Hendrick voted present. And unfortunately, this is the unfortunate reality that I've learned since being up here. A lot of times, it's not the message, it's the messenger. And that's just, to me, that's really, really unfortunate. A lot of times, it's not the message, it's the messenger. So with that, I see Dean raise his hand. May I yield to Dean?
But Action Director Wright is next.
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't get a chance to elaborate after my initial comments regarding the infrastructure. But I just wanted to weigh in, because you and I have already discussed some of my chief needs.
Yes, ma'am.
But what I find disheartening is when I talk to constituents like the lady that was with the grieving mother, and she says, well, Director Wright, I'm going to need you to step up. I'm going to need you to do this. I'm going to need you to do that. And when I looked into her eyes, what I clearly saw was she was not cognizant of the things that are being done or have been done or were being done before COVID. And it was quite distressing, but I realized what the disconnect is that the major things that I have been trying to get done, which is improving the housing stock. She indicated that she has a football team that practices at Union Park. Well, if you've ever been out on 36, you know the housing stock around that park is substandard. You know the streets are substandard. Okay, I've been trying to get the Union Park townhomes and infrastructure project and historic district done there since 2012. Never any money. Can't get any money. Then when you go down over into the neighborhood, she said, well, our kids need to have programs and we need to have this and we need to open the park. And she specifically mentioned Kiwanis. And we closed Kiwanis Park because of drug dealing. Well, I had 3 COPP officers in 2019, 2020, and we were just beginning to get some synergy. Then all of a sudden, they got pulled to the special detail. But prior to that, we would meet each week. We would sit down and strategize on things to do. And they had come up with a fishing derby at Kiwanis Park where they would recruit the kids out of Fair Oaks and Trinity Village, but Fair Oaks was their target. And they had agreed to open and close the gate at Kiwanis Park so that that gate could be open so cars could actually drive in there. They said, that's a no-brainer for us, Director Wright. That's because that's our beat. So when we come on duty, we'll open it. And when we go off duty, we'll lock it. Okay, problem solved. And Mr. Moore can tell you that that park has been an issue for many, many years. My phone would ring every Friday night and I'd ring his phone every Friday night. And it just got to be a pattern. Okay, then you come over to West Central and the lady was saying, our kids need to be in the park. You know, the community centers need to be open. Mr. Moore can tell you, I've been pleading with him for months and months and months to open up that community center, to open up, let us play baseball. Our phones are ringing off the hook. Parents want to play baseball. And so I can't do anything if I'm not allowed to do anything, if I don't have the resources to do anything. And one of the things that really kind of shook me was when she said, well, our kids need summer jobs. You know, a lot of these kids don't have jobs. When the community center was operational, our baseball program, we started something called a youth employment program. And as the kids aged out of that program, they were able to work as city employees called concessionaires. And we would pay them out of concession and gate receipts. That program was apparently not popular with some folk. So they wanted to bring in an outside vendor to take over that operation, which of course would eliminate those jobs for those kids. Well, I fought against that, and that didn't make me too popular, but I still fought against it because those kids need those jobs. And we also hire our own our kids to be sports officials, and that's a referee and an umpire. So we had all of these things. But what kind of shook me was that she had no clue that we had all these things, because all people see is what they see in front of them. So I know she's practicing at Union Park, and she's looking over there at those raggedy houses that have been like that for 30 years. She's looking at that side street that I've never been able to get fixed. And when I looked at the tax and there was nothing in there for the Targeted Community Development Initiative, which was specifically to address areas like that, it was frustrating. And then to be considered a food desert and a financial desert. And from that park, people that living in that area can't even walk to the grocery store because that bridge is probably 50 to 60 years old and it's at the end of its life, and you can't, there's no sidewalk on the other side, so you have to walk in the center of it. Mr. Moore, I've been asking about that bridge for many years, and I think last year, first of the year, I said, whenever we get our new allocation from the Arkansas Highway and Transportation Department, I'd like an allocation to replace that bridge. And I made that publicly so that it could be on record, because I've been asking about that since 2012. But the long and short of it is, we can't do anything as elected officials without some money. So I want to support this tax, but the chief project where I had the most impact on the kids is that sports complex with those ball fields and the master plan that we were trying to implement. Before we shut down in COVID, I believe in 2019, we had 48 basketball teams. That's about 15 kids each. And then we had 52 baseball teams, softball teams. We start with 3-year-olds, and that's 10 kids per team. You add the numbers up. But yet I got dugouts that were in place since the 50s and 60s, never have been upgraded. Been trying to get all of this done. I need funding. So what people see, residents see, so that for that lady to say, Director Wright, we need you to step up. With all, and right now, every last April, this April, May and June, I always have withdrawals because I'm at the ballpark every night. Every night. And I don't even have kids, but it's important to me to make sure everything goes right. And so to invest 15 years into building something, and then to have somebody walk in off the street and tell you that everything you did, they want to just start over and just totally tear it apart. This is the kind of stuff that happens. Every time you try to build community, you got all these forces that are pushing against you. And they know who they are. And some of them are in this room. So it's very, very frustrating to know that you have job training like customer service training that I raised the money for, hospitality training program that I raised the money for 18 and up, to work at hotels, to understand what customer service means. So when you do get a job, you can keep the job, so that you know how to greet people and how to talk to people on the job, not to be on your cell phone doing working hours, these kind of basic things. Partnerships with AT&T, Comcast, just did a youth art program, but this woman apparently knew none of that. So it's very frustrating that people can't see any physical change. And when you got all of this overwhelming shootings here and shootings there, 15 years of work was basically thrown back in my face when she said that. And but I understand it, because she's going by what she see. And she's seeing all those substandard houses. She's seeing these substandard streets that I can't get fixed because I can't get any money. So I do want to support this tax, but as it's structured, I can't. Because I need money in that targeted community development initiative, because just saying that you put money into housing or money into neighborhood stuff, I need to know how I can access it. I need to know that I'm going to be able to access it. I don't need to be told whenever I apply for funding or ask for funding, well, we don't have that right now, or we can't fix this street right now. Every year when we hear about the budget, well, we got all of this money in public works, yet can never get the streets fixed. So I understand her frustration, but it really frustrated me as well. So I want to support this, Mayor, but I do require some tweaks.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Wright. I think there's some things in place that we can make some changes to continue to get your support, and thank you for the support with the understanding that there needs to be some more changes. Again, very appreciative of your commentary from that standpoint. Just to kind of piggyback, I know we got to get to Director Computers. Then after Director Computers, Director Hendricks is next. Director Hendricks, we're coming to you next.
Let her go first.
Director Hendricks will, give me 1 second. We're about to come to you. We're about to come to you. Just give 1 second. You don't want to speak now? We can't hear you, Director Hendricks.
That's wrong. He has talked for almost an hour, and I think that's wrong. And if he talks before you let me talk, I'm gonna hang up this phone, okay? I mean that.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know whether the computer has got something on you that you gotta respond to him like a boy. I don't like
Director Hendricks, Director, we're coming to you. It's your turn to speak now.
Yes, you're right.
Yes, ma'am.
Why would you decide that computers was gonna speak again? He's not that important, not to me. He may be to you. But as far as I'm concerned, all of you are equal when it comes to me looking at you. But you really, it can have not come to you. I can't understand why you do not see my hand. My hand was up before many of these board members even spoke. So if you've got eyesight or something's wrong with your eyesight, let me know.
I do. Actually.
And you know, I love you, and I'm gonna fuss at you and tell you just.
And I apologize, but I do have very bad eyesight and have not seen your hand. Director Computers actually did, because I didn't see your hand. I called on him and he asked that you be able to speak.
Let me go.
So that's on me. That's not on Director Computers. That's on me. But with my bad eyesight, I'm gonna I gotta go to the eye doctor here in the next couple of weeks.
Listen, let me go on and speak. I just want to say everybody
Yes,
said a whole lot. Everybody has said a whole lot tonight. And I've always said it, even with the last tax that was passed, you didn't hear all this jargon, people talking and talking. It was passed. I was there. But with you being a black male and you got a majority Caucasian board, you ought to know you're going to have problems, okay? So that's all I got to say. I have fought for many years and none of you have crossed the paths that I have crossed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Director Computers.
Everybody says it's quick, but this will be quick. And it's always hard to talk after you or Antoine because you're both so eloquent. Couple of thoughts. One is you don't live in the past, but you learn from the past. And the way we've done everything is we take people and get them interested, and you put a little private money, a lot of private money in and very little city money in. And that's the way everything's happened. Secondly, I take slight offense to the fact that you said that no one's putting money into other areas. When after the problems we had, I came to you and the other members and asked you to visit with the people who were protesting. And you brought back a list of things that needed to be done, and every one of them have been done. Every one of them have been done or in the process of being done. Those are people who want to help, who are putting their time, effort, and money into helping people who need help. And I think that it may not have been the right time to do it, or they should have done something should have been done earlier, but it's being done now. And the business community is fully behind, and I've talked to Ken about this too, trying to help. If you look at what Grant's done with the help of the realtors, with the food deserts, it's going to make a difference. But the only way it's going to work in this city is just what Kathy said before. Partnerships are going to win out. The third thing I will tell you is it is our job to send something to the community to vote on, but I can't send something that I don't believe in. So that's the reason this discussion today is important. So I'll leave it at that.
Can I respond, Mayor?
You can, but I do want to respond. Director Capurius, we understand we keep talking about the past. We understand things haven't passed. If I lived my life based on everything in the past, I wouldn't be here today. And so there's a new era of things, of how things are done. Not saying there's always going to be room for collaboration and compromise, but because something was done 10 years ago, we did not have a pandemic. 10 years ago, we did not have a 100-year flood. 10 years ago, we did not have social and civil unrest. 10 years ago, we didn't have an insurrection. 10 years ago, we just didn't have those things. So there's a new way of thinking that still has to be collaborative and still has to have compromise. And that's the reason why we've been asking this board to speak up and share commentary since March the 25th. And so I'm happy that we're finally getting to that point. But just because something happened 10 years ago doesn't mean that we still have to operate that way in 2021 after all we've gone through. But that's just my response to that.
And I'm not saying we should. What I said to Antoine is, we don't live in the past, but we learn from the past. And I will reaffirm that statement. If you don't understand what you did in the past, you're going to make the same mistakes again. And I'm agreeing with you that we need to have a different way of looking at the world. But if you neglect the past, if you forget what you did in the past, you're going to make the same mistakes over and over and over again. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you do it the way you did it in the past, but you do learn from the past, in my opinion.
Agree. We'll have to agree to disagree. Director Phillips.
Yeah, I just want to respond. First, Director Capurius, thank you for saying I speak eloquently. I've been working on that, so I appreciate that. Second, I did not mean to offend. You are right. There were a conversation that I was a part of, and things have started to happen. But like you just said, when you were giving the examples of all the different examples in downtown, I understood those to become, because the city understood that was important, and then people came. And I'm using that same kind of framework to say we need to apply that into different parts of our city. And you're right. Our job is to figure out something we believe in to give people something to vote on. And I want to know what you believe in. I want to know what Director Wyrick believes in. I want to know what Director Peck, Director Webb, Director Richardson, Director Wright, Director Hines, Director Adcock. I want to know what everyone believes in so we can get to that point. There were some things that I heard today that I said that makes sense to me. I'm looking at Lance's, what he gave us. I mean, like Director Richardson said, I can't, like you said, you don't believe in some things you can't send to the people. I can't tell the people that we need to spend $25 million more on police officers. And I had someone text me, and I'm gonna give them credit. They said, well, Director Phillips, I did say that maybe we can have more police officers. So I did have one. They're watching and they corrected me. So I just want to correct the record. But just like you can't live with certain things, I can't live with $25 million for police officers when we see all the things that happen throughout the country. You talking about learning from the past? Well, we're learning that more police, and I'm not downplaying the police. I appreciate the chief and his staff and what they're trying to do to keep our city safe. But if we're going to learn from the past, then we should learn that more police isn't the answer. We can't keep making that same mistake over and over again by just saying, let's get more officers when that's not addressing the issues. The people that came to speak to us talked about us investing in their communities, opening up more community centers, some of the things Director Wright mentioned. So if we're going to get more police officers, I don't think we're learning from the past, in my opinion. The flip side of that, I want to mention, I want to thank Director Hines for taking the time to, I know this wasn't easy. This took some time out your days to put put together something for us to discuss. I can't agree to what you have in front of me, but there are things in here that are agreeable. And I think that's why I wanted to hear from you. You mentioned in here the targeted community development. That I'm with that, Director Hines. Everything else I think is pretty much the same from what I can see here, other than a big increase into the police officer, which to me that's a non-starter, and I think that's going to be a non-starter for a lot of our constituents. And personally, putting that in front of the voters, I don't think that passes. I mean, maybe I don't understand the people in the city of Little Rock, but I think I do. And I don't think 25 million is going to make this tax passable. I'll yield, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Director Wright, did you have your hand up again?
I did want to add one other thing. I think we need, when I'm looking at this public safety, I think he says dedicated COPP officers. And because the ones that we have are not allowed to be COPP officers. And so I want to make sure that we're clear on what we're saying. These are the officers that are assigned to the targeted areas where we're having the most trouble. These are not patrol officers. And I also would like to see some of them be park rangers, because we have a lot of parks. And COPP officers involve themselves with the neighborhood. At least mine were trying to before they got pulled. And so I want to make sure that we're clear that of what we're saying here, because my constituents ask me every time there's a meeting, what happened to our COPP? That's a question that I get. So I don't know what yours are saying, but I know what mine are saying. They want to know where our COPP officers are. And another issue that I have, and Mayor, I brought this up before, is that my boundaries were changed for my districts under policing. And I know you all don't want to hear about the past, but when we passed the last sales tax in 2011, there was supposed to be a substation on Highway 10 that would become Northwest Precinct. And the current Northwest Precinct would become West Central Precinct. Instead, my boundaries get shifted all the way to Southwest Little Rock. So my constituents are being told when they call Northwest that they have to call Southwest to get an officer. And I told you that's a non-starter for me. And so that has to be rectified as a part of all of this, because that is not what they were told. And I have heard that this is not what we were told when we passed this tax before, and they got long memories. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, and thank you for sharing that in the past of what this board made a commitment to. I can attest to that, but we will take that under advisement for that, from that standpoint.
Real briefly,
Director Richardson.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Real briefly, I think that, Dean, we certainly appreciate the efforts you've been doing, trying to help us.
I move we adjourn.
We're in an agenda meeting. That doesn't happen that way. He's
Let me be quick, Dean. I just think that as Doris and others start talking about community building, when I was 10 years old playing basketball, that part of the city was called East End. When we had gang intervention programs over there, that was called East End. Now, somehow, magically, majestically, it's East Village. So that's a segue to something in my mind. It's magically, majestically. Those people didn't say we want to be East Village. Somebody said we want to be East Village. And we'll see what kind of trouble they have with any kind of investment over there. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Believe we've now had everyone. I do want to talk about a couple different things. Mr. Moore and I have been talking about 911 and some of the issues that have been reported. We probably will be making a decision on how to make some positive changes there shortly, along with Chief Humphrey, but also with our Chief People Officer, Stacy Witherell, and a host of others that have been a part of that conversation. So there should be an update on some changes with 911 coming up shortly from that standpoint. As we get ready to come to the close, I'm not going to spend time. We've heard from everyone. I'm very grateful from members of the board for sharing information today. This is very helpful. This is what we've needed to have open, transparent conversation about our city's future and how we invest in our city's future for its best potential. I want to share that the current Rebuild the Rock proposal is based on not only what we've heard from the people of Little Rock, it's based on studies as well that the people of Little Rock have been a part of. And most importantly, it's an equity-driven proposal that focuses on how do we address the ills within our city that are multifaceted. And in addition, it still focuses on, as Director Wyrick says, the nuts and bolts. And from Director Webb, as you shared from that very good book, Understanding Functionality and Safety, and also aspirational, it's a combination of having equity as well as our aspirational desires to take us to be the city that we are. We are not a town. We are a mid-sized, large city, a state capital city that has to invest in itself. And when you understand that our general fund budget has majority of our general fund budget, demonstrates how much we appreciate the men and women of the Little Rock Police Department and the Little Rock Fire Department, because it's 52% of our budget. And we're, in addition to that, this proposal calls for more money for Little Rock Police Department, Little Rock Fire Department than it was 10 years ago. This proposal addresses many of the issues that we hear from residents that are impacted by the senseless acts of violence. What do we do to be transformative for the long term, not these quick, easy fix? And that's the reason why we're investing in early childhood education. That's the reason why we're investing in affordable housing. That's the reason why we're focused on small business entrepreneurship within the economic development standpoint. That's the reason why we have to focus on education and jobs to ensure that we have livelihoods for our residents as we move forward. And that is the vision of this proposal, to focus on how we unite, focus on how we have an equity-driven proposal, how we grow and transform, in addition to everything that was shared today, because there were some good things that were shared today. And we're going to go back and retool some things and present a proposal, hopefully for a vote on May 4th, based on the feedback that we received. And that's why we're so grateful to have this feedback. We're so grateful for our department directors that have been here every meeting, addressed every question, presented to this board time and time again. And for board members, please take time to go online and see the presentations that's already been presented to you, not once, not twice, but 3 times and 4 times. And we have more information, and Mr. Moore and myself stand ready to answer those questions. But we need you. You have to take time to read the information and or listen to the conversation that's going on, because some of the things is kind of surprising when you don't know something's happened, and we know it clearly has happened. And so we everybody's time is valuable, particularly our department directors. And so, you know, they're spending time, as they should, to share this information, but you gotta be willing to listen to the information that's being shared as well. So transitioning from there on how we focus on uniting, growing, because we are right. It has to focus on, this is something that we all have to work together to pass. And at the end of the day, the people are going to make the decision. What we're asking is for the board to share this with the people. We will take this feedback as we move forward from that standpoint. I'm very grateful for that as we move forward together. So Mr. Moore, myself, and Director Linehan will take some time this evening, the next couple of days, to see if there's some areas to retool based on the feedback that we heard, particularly from Director Wright, Director Wyrick, Director Computers, even Director Hines on the, thank you, Director Hines. I know you shared about more social workers. We put that in this budget. You voted yes on the budget for the 1 social worker that we have. We want to continue to have more social workers from that standpoint on how we reimagine policing and understand that we can't arrest our way out of things. But I do want to tactically share some things. Board members, the reason why the COP officers removed is because we wanted to address, based on feedback from the community, but also feedback from this board, that wanted to address caravanning and wanted to address the increase in violent crime from a domestic standpoint. So we had to transition those officers because this board, but we got to have the same appetite, because I get phone calls and text messages from you all about caravanning, not about homicides. That's just plain and simple. I get phone calls and text messages about caravanning, but not about homicides. And that has to change. And so I'm asking this board to make sure that we all are working together. And this is the way that we have to move forward, by being open and transparent with one another, because we got real issues that have to be addressed. This proposal does that, and with some tweaks that are going to come, because we heard from you today, and we're glad that we finally heard from you, so we can make these tweaks so we can move forward together and to pass this, because it takes 6 votes to pass, and then move forward together. So with that being said, we can now transition. I know we're still in the agenda item. We have questions on parliamentarian. Where are we on the agenda? I know you were sharing with me. Number 9. Are there any questions on number 9? That's on the public hearing. Director Wright?
I just wanted a presentation so that I would know how the funds are being used this year.
Yeah, Director Howard, if you come give the presentation. Department directors, I know some of you all, you guys, if y'all want to transition, you can, but unless you want to stay with Director Howard. We'll see how much they really like you, Director Howard.
Hopefully they stay. No, Director Wright, I know Chief Hubbard better stay. We'll have a problem tomorrow. Many times I helped them out. But Director Wright, consistent with the city's participation plan, the Consolidated Planning Committee recommended the source and uses of our 2021 HUD entitlement funds, which total a little over 3.2 million. Under CDBG, we allowed, received 1.571 from CDBG, which is a little over $1.5 million, and that goes to owner-occupied rehabilitation. It's under the resolution, if you want to click on it and follow me as well. Owner-occupied rehabilitation, that's $935,847.20. Fairlink, which is a public service for Meals on Wheels, $60,000. Winston-Salem Industries for the blind, DBA IFB Solutions, $40,000. Ministry and DBA Bridges to Success. I know you all heard about that in the past couple of meetings. $36,000. Salvation Army, $18,000. CHI St. Vincent East Clinic for Health Services, $175,000. And then we have administration, $306,000 to $1,180. And that gives us a total of $1.5 million. Under Home Investment Partnerships Program, Acquisition Rehab, we also receive program income of $276,000 that we'll put back out, $276,217.35. New construction, $553,594.50. Total set aside, which we are mandated to do, of 15% of our allocation, $110,718.90. Administration, which also includes program income of $30,690.82, and also administration of $73,812.60, for a total of a little over $1.045 million. Under our HOPWA, Housing Opportunity for Persons with AIDS, housing assistance and related supported services, $563,961.60. Project sponsors administration, $43,863.68. Grantee administration, which is 3%, $18,798.72, for a total of $626,624 even. Those are our sources and uses of funds for our federal funds.
Okay. Will you be able to attend the meeting on Thursday? Did you get that email?
Yes, ma'am. And I have a doctor's appointment, but after that, I'll be there. My doctor appointment started at 11, but I'll be there right after that. It shouldn't take that long.
Okay. Well, hopefully you can make it, because I want to find out if some of these dollars can be used on some of the things that you and I have been discussing, seems like forever. I know it's been the last 5 years. Hopefully you can have some updates on some partnerships that we were pursuing at one point.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Is it anything else, ma'am?
All right, we have now gone through everything on the agenda. And I know I just kind of
Can
about to go to that.
And we do have a little PowerPoint. I thought maybe we could just hand it out. It's been a long evening. Let them sort of digest it on the Targeted Community Development Initiative, and then give an update in about 2 weeks when we come back.
I think that's we
I
definitely
like that a lot.
we'll entertain that. All right. Also, Director Peck, in that same order, thank you so much for the Sustainability Commission report that you've shared. And we do appreciate you providing that Sustainability Commission. Do you want to give a brief comment on it?
No, but I just want to say, if y'all are really nice, I might bring strawberry shortcake for everybody next week. If y'all all are nice to each other. You promise, everybody? Everybody. It's you too, Charles. Just because you're over there. It's everybody in this room.
All right. This meeting is adjourned.
Oh. Okay, all right.
Now, you know our